welcome to another, well, I want to say weekly Wednesday live stream, because I know I did that last week, but it's Thursday.
It's a Thursday live stream.
Yeah. And of course we do that for a very special reason, both last week and this week, because we want to be able to give you the, well, day 0 or day 1 coverage of last week 3080, and this week, of course, here it is, one of them, 3090.
The top model.
Yes. I forgot, I'm Peter, of course. This is Mike.
Mike.
Mike is actually working from home.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a cold, so I'm avoiding the office right now.
So we actually,
so
I've got this like little
in
earplug in, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to hear Mike. And you know, so.
Indeed. So I can also make myself
Me too, but you have to give me a bit more time than, you know. Anyway. All right, so today we're going to be talking all about the 3090. And of course we've got 2 cards, which both are here. One is in the test rig actually running, and this one I'm going to be benchmarking for you live. And after the benchmarks, we need a little bit of time, because this beast then needs to cool down a little bit. And then hopefully I can tear it down for you. And of course, 3090 Ventus here as well. There you go. Also, we're going to be looking at...
So everyone is looking for those cards, and you have 2 3090s here?
Tell me about it. But you have no idea. I mean, these samples, I had to fight, well, not literally, but almost fight for these, to have these in the stream. Because, like, literally everybody here in the company is just saying, can you give me a sample? Because I need to do like a project.
I need them for that.
Yeah, I need like a project, or, you know, we need to do a campaign, and they want to do a build with this card. I think, no, dudes, come on. We also need to show people on the stream. So anyway, I had to guard these with my life, and actually I locked the door, because I bet people are like just waiting outside the studio, you know, to ambush me as soon as I leave. So let's make the best of it while we have them here, shall we?
Good idea.
Yeah.
And we also have a giveaway today.
Yes, we have a giveaway, as you can see right here, above, well, just to the side of my head. It's of course a $20 Steam wallet code. You can participate by going to msi.com/2/insider. And I think in the chat we have a giveaway direct link to the giveaway being, well, I want to say spammed, but being posted every 5 minutes, if I'm correct. And we stream on multiple platforms, if you didn't know. So there's YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and multiple channels of Twitter or Periscope. And it's only on YouTube and Twitch that you can actually find these links to the giveaway. So if you cannot find them and you're watching on Facebook or Periscope or Twitter, that's why. So if you want to participate, head on over to our YouTube or Twitch channels. So I think YouTube is just search for MSI Gaming, and Twitch the same. And you'll
should pop up.
Exactly, you'll find it. And yeah, let's get started. I'm trying to see if you know, is there anything in the chat that I can. If you get any questions, let me know. Just search 3090 benchmarks and prepare to be disappointed. Well, I don't know.
I see someone, we don't want a Steam card. Okay, then don't take it.
Yeah, sure. then that's fine. You know.
You don't need to accept it.
Exactly. It's really up to you. Nobody's forcing you.
You don't need to participate.
Yeah, nobody's forcing you. It's just something else. You know, it's something extra we want to, you know, give to you guys, to like a thank you for joining.
People are looking forward to benchmarks. I see. Yep. We will definitely run several benchmarks today.
That's why I've got this set up here. Are you expecting Big Navi to compete? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. We actually also don't know. We're watching the rumors, same as you guys. And I mean, as a tech enthusiast and a gamer enthusiast, yeah, I hope so. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. 3090, not a gamer card? Yeah, perhaps some truth to that.
Well, you can surely game on it.
Oh yeah, and if you wanna play on 8K, it's currently really the only option you have. That's, you know, at all able to do 60 FPS or ish.
Mr. Masterox is asking, does the 3090 weigh about 1.5 kilograms?
No, way more than that. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, that's a good question.
Depends a little bit on the version, I think.
Yeah. Wait, maybe I can. These things, you know, they invented websites for that. So let me quickly. Let me quickly find the answer for you guys. But yeah, I mean, they are heavy.
NG is asking, is a 750 watt PSU enough? Well, that's what we're currently running it with.
Yes.
So should be okay.
Yeah, and actually, that should still leave you with some space for a powerful CPU and other components in your system to overclock a bit. So, yeah, and if you want to be on the safe side, I believe we also have 850 watt power supplies.
Yeah, it depends a little bit on what you combine it with. If you're going for like the mainstream segment CPU, so a 10th gen Intel Core processor or a 3rd gen Ryzen processor, then 750 should be perfectly fine. If you're going high-end desktop platform, so for example AMD Threadripper or the Intel X299 platform, then of course your CPU will also consume a bit more power, and then you might want to consider, for example, upgrading to 850 watts. So it depends on your complete system, of course.
John Opa, you should take down the 8K gaming in the title. It could lead to some lawsuits. Tech Jesus reviewed it. I haven't seen that yet. We tried, because it's like literally an hour ago that all the reviews went online. We tried to review as many of them as possible in a short time. But we're just copying what NVIDIA said. And I mean, you can technically game on 8K. It depends on what you define it as, I guess. Anyway, we'll have some numbers on that as well. Unfortunately, I don't have an 8K monitor. It is 4K right here, so we're going to test that. But I do have some benchmarks that can render at 8K at least.
And I think, to be fair, most people buying this card in this stage will game on 4K, I suppose.
Yeah.
Especially now with 4K high refresh rate monitors also popping up.
Yep.
So yeah, I think that will be
be honest, guys. Who even has an 8K monitor at this point? Hands up. I don't think they're that common. Some of you might have it, but it's like more of an oddity at this point than a common resolution. But I guess they're just trying to show off, like,
look,
hey,
everyone in chat has an 8K.
Yeah, of course. Either they have one or they want one now. Fair enough. That was a dumb question to ask. Bill Gates has it. Yeah, probably. I'd be surprised if he only has one.
Triple monitor 8K.
Oh yeah. All right. By the way, getting back to the question, indeed, the card itself, the Gaming X Trio, so this one, 3090, weighs in at 1,565 grams, so just over 1.5 kilograms. And the Ventus, the 3090 Ventus, I've got it right here, weighs in at just under 1,400 grams. So, heavy boys.
Beefy card.
Yeah. But I mean, that's also why I've got something here that I took out of the box. It's like literally I got the sample for this one. I got, I think, this morning. So that's like the time frame we're working with as well internally. And this is what's included in the box, I believe, with the Vents or the gaming. I'm not sure, either one. But it's it's a strap. I think I showed you last week as well with the 3080, because honestly, these cards are quite similar in weight and dimensions. So it's not necessary if you just leave your case in place. Once you install the card and then you fix all the screws in place, you should be fine. But if you move your case around, or if you go to a LAN party or stuff like that, this really comes in handy just to provide that extra bit of support, make sure that nothing like bends out of shape while you hit a bump in the road or something.
Yeah, see, Kratos Grim is asking on Twitch as well, do they ship with the support bracket? Yeah, the bracket, yes. Peter was just showing that one comes included in the box.
There you go. It's a really nice support bracket, and yeah, I mean, it just, you can install it if you want. You shouldn't really need it.
You can use it with.
I mean, to be honest, this is what I've got right here, right? This is like literally not even, nothing is holding it in place. Now, of course, this one is sitting vertically. But yeah, it's the slots these days, and Mike will be able to tell you way more about it because he's about the motherboards, of course. But the PCIe slots in the past few years, they've been taking into account that cards are getting heavier. So it shouldn't really be a problem, not for the motherboard. I can't really speak for the case manufacturers, but I guess it should be able to handle it. Would be a bit strange if your case would actually start
bending. The board we're using today is the MPG B550 Gaming Carbon Wi-Fi, and that, for example, comes with a steel armor reinforced PCI Express slot.
Yep.
So it is already a lot stronger and prepared for those heavy graphics cards.
Yes. All right. Anyway, so guys, because I see a lot of people saying, "Hey, come on, let's get the results. Let's do it. Hit it." We've got some.
Let's start with the start. Yeah.
Yes, let's do that. I think this was the one. Yeah, here we go. As you can see, borrowed from Tom's Hardware. This is the Founder Edition versus the Founders, because we wanted to make sure you get like a baseline as well. So as you can see, 3080 FE. This is at 4K Ultra, by the way, a 9-game average. So again, per game it can differ, but 9-game average. The average FPS of a 3080 was just shy of 100 FPS, so 98.6. And the 3090 FE on average does 109.2. So I think a lot of us have already seen the headlines. Depending on the game title, the 3090 compared to the 3080 is about 10 to 15% faster.
Yeah, according to NVIDIA, and also what you see here in this benchmark for, I think that's
in games.
Quite correct.
Yeah, in games. But I mean, let's not forget that the really biggest difference between these two cards, apart from the size and the name, is of course the memory size. So you go from the 3080 with 10 gigs of GDDR6X to the 3090 with 24, which is, I want to say, a huge jump. And it's not like most games don't even use. You're going to be stressed to find scenarios where games actually tend to use full 10 gigs already. Some of them do, especially at high resolutions, and if you don't use DLSS, because that again uses lower resolution textures, so that would actually decrease the VRAM usage. And I'll show you that in a minute as well. We tried to find the benchmark in a very short time where we could actually find a game that would use the most amount of memory without, for example, modding Skyrim to hell and back. Because I guess you can do it that way, but we didn't have time to do that. But like in a native game, what is a setting where you actually use more than 10 gigs? And we found something. We had to dig a bit, but we found something.
And it's also a little bit future-proofing, of course. Right now, it's not really needed to go that far beyond it.
No.
But you don't know what the future will look like, and maybe in the future, especially with those higher resolutions, games will get more and more in demand of memory.
Yeah. Can it play Crysis? I'm gonna say yes.
If you set it to low, I think it can play Crysis.
You mean set the graphics card to low? All right. Remastered, yeah. Okay. But indeed, I mean, to be honest, if you really go for gaming, and especially at 4K, for example, seeing and knowing the price tag of a 3090 over a 3080, it's really up to you. But indeed, the 3080 is more bang for your buck. Let's get that out of the way. But I
think that's always the case with like the real flagship GPU. Like if you want the best ratio of price, like price per frame, basically.
Yes.
That's never the top end model.
No, it's usually like a 30, like the 70 model, or well, 80 series, usually also not even. So yeah.
Depends a little bit on what they do with the naming as well.
Yeah.
Because true. Last generation it was 2080, 2080 Ti.
Yes.
Now it's 3080, 3090. So.
Yeah, I think people call it like I don't want to say the premium tax or something, but if you want indeed the best GPU, the highest end, that one is usually the most expensive, and it doesn't really scale linearly to the performance. So this is indeed, it's nothing new. I mean, yes, the price for the 3090 is higher than 2080 Ti, but yeah, it's nothing new. So
Deepak is asking on YouTube, why should I buy 3090 instead of 3070 as I have no 8K monitor? I would say if you play on a lower resolution, it doesn't make sense for you to buy a 3090. So then I would recommend going with, for example, a 3070.
Well, it depends. I mean,
in
because
the future,
you're saying I don't have an 8K monitor. I don't think many of us do. But if you have 4K, it can
4K,
still...
then you could consider
exactly,
it.
It can still make sense. The 3080 is quite capable at 4K already. But if you have, I mean, there are some scenarios where if you want to run everything at ultra, again, later on I'm going to show you one benchmark, Shadow of the Tomb Raider. If you put everything on the highest setting, then your VRAM usage is going to surpass 10 gigs, for example. But I mean, these are, you really have to like put every setting on the highest setting and disable DLSS to get there. But yeah, I mean, it's possible. And I don't know in the future games what they're going to do. They might have a similar scenario as well, where you're going to run into maybe some VRAM issues or something, a shortage. I don't know. But yeah, there are scenarios possible. But it's up to you whether you want to pay the money for a 3090 instead of a 3080. That's really up to you.
Tom Greg is saying on Twitch, 3090 is necessary for Microsoft Simulator 20. I think he means Flight Simulator 2020. Yeah, I heard that's very demanding indeed.
I don't know the memory demanding, especially for that one.
I'm not sure either.
That would be interesting to see. Anyway, so this is like the baseline, right? We've also got some performance index comparison from Dutch media Tweakers. They did a 4K Ultra test, also a multi-game average. It's normalized at 100% on the right side at least, where you can see the red lines highlighting the 3080 results here. And this is the result based on an Intel processor, the 10900K. Versus the 3900 XT from AMD. So we also want to highlight, because we got a lot of questions from you guys about, which CPU should I use and is there a real benefit and when does it bottleneck? The bottleneck in question we will get back to, because we kind of try to prepare like a general idea for you guys where we can at least give you an idea of how generally you can decide when you should start thinking about upgrading your CPU or when you should be fine. Anyway. But considering the two top-end CPUs from Intel and AMD, as you can see, there is at the 3080, which is highlighted here, there is relatively little benefit, if any. So on average, at least, again, there might be some scenarios where you get a bigger difference, but on average, it is a 0.1% difference between the two in favor in this case of the 10900K. But that's I guess that is also within margin of error. So
this is all within margin of error. Yes.
Yeah, that's the thing. And if you look at the 3090, so that's the top one on the right side, you can see it's 0.5% difference in this case in favor of the AMD the 3900 XT. So really, I guess what you could take away from this is, if you have to choose between these two, there's not you can't make a bad choice. Both choices are good.
In 4K Ultra, then you won't notice any difference.
Yeah.
Later on, we'll talk about it in more detail, but the load will be on your GPU, so it will not be a huge difference. Yeah. This will, however, change with lower resolutions and lower settings.
But I mean, if you are planning to run lower resolutions on a 3080 or 3090, that's debatable in itself, but that's really up to you. I mean, we don't run your setup. We don't tell you how to run it, but it's not advisable, let's say, to run lower resolutions with a 3090 because you wouldn't get as much benefit out of the graphics card upgrade. So from that perspective, at least, it doesn't make sense to run lower resolutions. Again, it really is up to you. Do we have benchmarks on RTX 3090 and NVLink? Actually, no, we tried to do that. So that's a really good question, because this is indeed the only graphics card that does have it. You guys can't see me pointing at it, but it doesn't matter. Indeed, the 3090 is the only 30 series cards, at the moment at least, that has an NVLink or SLI connector. But we actually don't have an SLI bridge or a connector for it yet. We tried to get it.
Not at this point, so maybe in the future.
Exactly, so we're going to see if we can try and get it at some point in the future, but at the moment we simply also don't have it. And I mean, you could also see, I think it was last week or earlier this week, that NVIDIA announced that they are going to stop supporting game profiles for SLI starting from beginning of next year. So, I mean, you can really see that NVIDIA is kind of, at least for the gaming segment, they're really winding down the SLI. They already were doing that for some generations, I think, but yeah, now it's really showing up.
Yeah, like the the old school SLI connector used to be present on a lot of cards in their lineup, and last generation with the 20 series we already saw, I believe it was from the 2070 and upwards, only had the NVLink connector. And this generation, it's even only the 3090. So with anything below, you don't even get that connector. So you cannot even run multiple cards for gaming.
Yeah, yeah. I also see a question from Vibe. He's saying everybody seems to be disappointed with the graphene backplate, and that it flexes a lot more than metal and compared to plastic. I will actually get back to that because I do have 2 samples of both backplates here, and we do plan to do more coverage about it. But I think it might be good to get at least some facts on the table, or at least show you guys a little bit about it more. So later on this stream we'll cover a little bit more about that.
How it works and the characteristics and
yeah,
stuff
but also, I mean, I can actually do some bending tests here because I have physical samples. But for the sake of science, I would prefer it to be done with like a measurement scale, so you can actually see that if I apply the same weight at the same point on both backplates, you know, how far it actually bends. Because honestly, having it in my hands, and I tried to bend both of them, and the graphene backplate is actually pretty strong. It's a bit thicker, of course, than the metal backplate. And even though the metal backplate does have heat pipes attached to it, which adds to the rigidity a little bit, it still doesn't flex more, in my opinion, at least, than the metal one. But again, a lot of variables there. So we hope to have a more detailed view on that more as well. A lot of questions about how much. I can give you a little bit of an answer there. So actually we got a lot of people asking for this last stream as well, and we usually don't like mentioning any numbers because it's always tricky, and especially at this moment. And it's always tricky because we can say a price, but every country, I mean, we're in Europe especially, and in Europe every country has its own VAT. So that means that influences the price, and this can be several percentages, so it can be quite a big difference, especially on a 3090. And why I'm saying at this moment is because of how the market works. You've always got supply and demand, and so right now, obviously, there is a hell of a lot of demand and not that much supply. And this is the same for every generation. So this is also not a unique situation for the 30 series launch. I mean, at Turing we had the same, at Pascal, at Maxwell. Every generation is pretty much the same. And at the beginning of a generation, you will see prices higher indeed, simply because the demand is higher than the supply. This is just how the market works. There's not a whole lot we can do about it. Actually, we are, by law, not even allowed to do anything about it. Because we are not allowed to set the price that you guys pay in the shops. That is down to the shops themselves, and I mean, yeah, that's the thing. Anyway, here it is. What I am allowed to tell you is that the MSRP that we are basically selling these cards, or I don't know, offering these cards for, or setting, or advising, I think is a better word. The recommended end user price. And this is excluding VAT, so keep that in mind. That means that you will never ever find these prices in the shop anyway, because there's taxes that still needed to be added on, obviously.
And the VAT differs per country,
like I mentioned
in some
before.
Countries even per state, for example in the United States.
Yeah. But, and here it is. For the 3080 Ventus, it is 606 euros, excluding VAT or VAT. So again, this excluding any taxes. For the 3080 Gaming X Trio, it's 669 euros, excluding taxes. For the 3090 Ventus, it is 1300 euros, excluding any taxes. And the 3090 Gaming X Trio, it's 1365, excluding any taxes. And these are euro numbers, by the way. So it's euros, not dollars. Don't get me wrong here. again, and why we're giving you these numbers is obviously because we do kind of want to show you guys that, you know, we are just trying to do like we always do, try to set a normal, reasonable price in the market. But again, this is what you see every time a new product launches. Prices are sky high because of the enormous demand. And again, there's not a whole lot we can do about it. But usually, as you will see, have also seen, if you know about anything about and you've seen the previous launches, what you will see is that in a matter of weeks or months, usually, you know, supply gets going a bit more and prices will normalize. So you will find a bit more normal prices in a bit more time. So that's really all I can say about it. And I hope that helps a little bit to at least, you know, give some insight into the prices. Even if it doesn't help you right now, if you want to buy a card right now, yeah, I mean that's just the current situation.
Zoltish is asking on YouTube, how would a 3070 rank on that list you got up?
That's a good question.
We will have a dedicated stream about the 3070, which will launch in October.
Yes.
And of course, when it launches, we will have a dedicated live stream also about the 3070. Yeah. So you can see exactly where it ranks up against the 3080, 3090, but also previous generation.
Yes, you have to wait a little bit longer for that, obviously, because again, there's a separate launch date for that set by NVIDIA, and before that date, I mean, obviously they announced the 3070, so we are allowed to talk about it, but things like performance, that is still under NDA, as they call it, so it's still, we're not allowed to talk about it. Honestly, we don't have numbers for it yet either, so we too are very curious to find out how that lands. Usually it's a pretty good one. Looking at the past generations, the 70s series, like I said, it's like 970 was a hell of a card. 1070 was pretty good as well for the bang for the buck.
I think also kind of the sweet spot in between.
2070 was pretty good. I think 2060 was just a bit better in terms of price performance. 2070 was still a pretty sweet card.
It depends a little bit on what you do.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, plenty of reason to be excited about 3070 as well, but like I said, unfortunately there's nothing other than yes, it's coming, and there are some details about it on our website, how the models will look, which models we will have. Those details are on our website, you can find them there. But in terms of performance and where it ends up, we're gonna have to wait and see, guys. All right, back to the numbers then a little bit. This is one of the things that's also, I think, you know, NVIDIA said it's the 8K monster, and really the only thing that can run 8K games currently at anything even close to or over 60 FPS. And here you have kind of the proof. So this is also from Dutch Media Tweakers. They were, well, I wasn't able to find that many media reviews that actually did 8K testing. So it turns out that probably they're still going to have to...
Quite rare still.
Exactly, yeah. They're going to have to, get used to that or find ways to do that. Anyway, you can see 3 titles here. Control, which does the best. And it's no surprise that NVIDIA, I think also in a lot of their numbers, they use Control as like a, I don't know, I don't want to say best case scenario, but you know, as a benchmark, a showcase. So yeah, close to 70 even, which is impressive. For reference and for full disclosure, I don't know, and they didn't mention on the website if this was with DLSS enabled or not. I'm tempted to think that probably it is, but again, I don't know for sure. Doom Eternal also at ultra settings at 8K, sorry, 63.3. That's just, I mean, we also saw the Linus video where he had, I think it was yesterday or something, where he had the 8K display and he was playing the Doom Ultra and stuff, Doom Eternal. I mean, it's mind-blowing. That, to be honest, it's this isn't something that we've seen before. And Project Cars 3 also 8K Ultra, just over 53.5 FPS. Again, not quite 60, but getting there. So yeah, I don't know what to say. It's probably not even all games support 8K resolution. Because again,
I see an interesting question in chat from Daniel Talia, by the way. Peter, one question. Did you guys ever consider to move the power connectors from the top of the card to the back of the card?
Yes.
Somehow to not come with power cables in front of the case?
Yes, we did. And several issues, or several potential issues or things that you have to keep in mind there. I mean, it's no problem moving them, but especially with these cards, if you can you switch back to the main view for a second, Mike?
Yep.
Here you go. So these cards, I don't know, do I still have it open? Let's see. The length of these cards, these are quite long, right? So some cases, a lot of cases actually, would have trouble because here you might be running actually, this is the part where you have your case edge, the I/O connector. So this is the back of your case. This is the front. A lot of cases will have case fans like pretty much right here. And if you have the connectors on this side, like you see, you have the cable sticking out. So you still need to account for the space that they have to take, and you don't want them running into the case fans. So that's one.
And even if you have the space, if you still want to have the option open, for example, to have a radiator right there, you would also block the space for a radiator by having the power connectors there.
So it's mostly,
I think in general, most cases like they have more space left on the top side than on the back. Yeah,
well, on the top side, I mean, traditionally, if you mount this, this will be mounting facing the one of the sides, right? And the newer cases, I guess they're a bit wider. You know, they're not quite as narrow, so they have a bit more space. Either that, or you can, if you can mount it vertically, then it should be no issue at all because you've got space above it. But there are, you know, practical things to keep in mind there. That, you know, if you would be doing that, it kind of would eliminate even the option for a lot of people to, in their current case, actually build this thing in, because it simply wouldn't fit with the power connectors facing that way. We've also seen adapters that like a 90-degree angle like that. I mean, we have thought about it, but yeah, to be honest, there's actually a lot of testing and certifications that go into if you want to do that. We've seen other brands in the past, they've made it actually, they've made these things, and they were actually, some of them could actually in some cases like almost melt or catch fire. I don't know exactly the details, but yeah, like I said, if you do these things, you want to make sure it's like 100% safe. Maybe even include some extra fuses in there or something, so that there's no danger whatsoever of things going wrong with it. But you know, it's like with everything you add on to a product like this. Especially, it's partly mechanical because you would have to click it on and stuff, and then you could take it off again, so it can break. But also, it's another point of potential failure that you're adding, and a big one at that, because it's all the friggin' power, and I do mean all the power, especially for the 3090, that will go into that. So yeah, there's a lot of things to consider, and honestly, at this point at least, we've decided that it's not worth the trouble yet. Who knows in the future? But for now, I mean, the amount of people that would end up using it is potentially quite low, as we've estimated. And yeah, it's just not, not worth it at the moment.
It used to be quite common in the past, but that was back in the day when graphics cards were a lot shorter.
I think
so
in the 10 series,
not run into
Pascal is when we've seen it at a couple of cards. I remember that. But yeah, those were a lot shorter, and they had a lot more space on all sides. So you had a little bit more space to play with, and it wasn't quite as much power that had to go through it. And even those had issues in some cases. So yeah, again, if you do something, you have to make sure you do it well, and there's no danger of any failure happening. Are there any discount codes for the 3080 MSI? I don't know, but if you find them, please send them to me. I would like to know. This is a workstation card. I would love to work with it, but it isn't a gaming card. I mean, there's a case to be made for it, yes. I've also seen a lot of benchmarks. I think NVIDIA also, I mean, we can pull that up quickly. I think I have it here. Let me see. Yep. So NVIDIA also posted this, we've got some delay in the capture, I guess.
Capture still running?
Yeah, I know. Well, I thought it was, but it's, I've actually, here we go. Yeah, so there's a little bit of a delay going. Anyway, so they actually posted this, or I don't know, published this screenshot as well of the. This is the green bars are the 3090 compared to the Titan RTX, and it's kind of telling that they compare these two cards, obviously, and also the benchmarks that they've chosen to highlight are well, like Autodesk Arnold, Blender Cycles, V-Ray, Luxmark, Redshift, Octane Bench. These are indeed more like, you know, creator programs, productivity benchmarks. So yeah, there's definitely a case to be made for it. And I think, I mean, as you will see here, this is compared to the Titan RTX. And I mean, it's anywhere up to let's see, the lowest one is about a 1.4 times speed up, and the highest one in Luxmark is near 1.8, I guess. So yeah, and it makes sense, because if you look at the programs that tend to use the most memory, you will mostly be looking at content creating programs, rendering things. Yeah, those will tend to really utilize the full 24 gigs or even close to that of a graphics card like this. So yeah.
You got busted, by the way, Peter.
Why?
Chat noticed you didn't activate Windows.
Oh god! Oh no! Oh. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I think we should open up our own Patreon channel soon, so we can. You know, we're too poor to do. No, I'm just joking. Again, we switch out systems just a hell of a lot of times, and it doesn't really make sense. We've tried it in the past.
We would have to reactivate all the time.
I don't think Microsoft would like us even attempting this, because it would cost them more time of people on the phone helping us out fixing these licenses than they would make from the actual licenses. So yeah. Anyway. But yeah, activate Windows. Nice. Let me see. All right. So that's like I said. So 8K Ultra, yes, for games that even support it, and the games that we see here, yeah, you can go over 60 FPS. So I would say confirmed. Your mileage may vary, your experience, if you even have an 8K screen. Let's see. Then we also saw some specific reviews of our Gaming X, so the card that I actually have here on my desk. So before I go into the physical benchmarks, I also want to show you already kind of the results that third-party media have, you know, so people not in our own environment, but like in their own testing environment, real-world scenarios, compared to some
independent media.
Yeah. Some of the other competitor models, I guess you could call it. So we noticed that some of our competitor cards have dual BIOS. Our gaming does not. It has a single BIOS. However, because we noticed that, hey, you know, in some cases, some people might actually prefer to have a BIOS that might be a little bit louder, so the fan RPM will be a bit higher. However, the temperatures will be lower. I mean, mostly we see that in Europe, at least, or in the Western world, that people tend to like a good balance between silence and performance. And, you know, as long as the temperatures don't go up too high, and to be honest, like 77 degrees or something, that's really nothing to be worried about. That's actually quite low. We actually saw earlier today as well, I got somebody pointed out to me that actually compared to Turing, NVIDIA, their own temperature limit, when it actually starts to matter, or when it would potentially like clock down hard, is actually I don't know, 4 or 5 degrees higher than compared to Turing. So that also tells you that NVIDIA knows that, yes, these cards potentially can get hotter, but they really set the safe temperature. And the safe temperature, I think, was like 93 degrees. So yes, the GPU might start throttling before that. So you might actually see that the clock speed might get reduced a little bit before you get to 90 degrees. I don't know the exact temperature when it starts doing that. That's all the GPU 5.0, GPU Boost 5.0 thing going on. So it will try to boost the clock frequency as high as it can within the margin of the power limit and the temperature it has. And at some point, obviously, it will see like, okay, now we're getting into temperature range where I think it makes sense to kind of like, you know, tone down a bit. I don't know what temperature it does that. At some point, we probably will find out. But I'm pretty sure that 77 degrees is not that temperature. It has to be higher than that. So 77 is nothing to be worried about. But we noticed that the people like to have a choice between the, well, you know, a more silent BIOS where you might have a little bit higher temperatures, or a BIOS where you have a lower temperature, but perhaps a little bit more noise. And you can even do that. I mean, we offer a BIOS for this, so it will be on our website soon, I'm told. Here you can see both BIOSes actually tested by TechPowerUp, compared to, in this case, the 3090 Strix. So we've highlighted the two in red because those are the two you should compare, basically, which is both are the quiet BIOS, if you want to call it that. Although our quiet BIOS is our default BIOS. So if you buy this product, the quiet BIOS, so the one highlighted in red right now at below, that's the one you will have. There, as you can see at load, TechPowerUp sees that it can go up to about 77 degrees Celsius, and the noise is 33 decibels, which is really freaking silent. I'm just looking, and it's actually the most silent in their test. Here you go, by a margin of 1. But yeah, so it's a little bit hotter, as you can see, than the Strix, but it's more silent, and the fan RPM is also a bit lower. So then what you do if you go to the next slide, here we go. Now we have the what we call the low temp BIOS, or I think I've even seen it as cooler than ever. I don't know what the exact name will be. Anyway, a BIOS, and what it does is it will adjust the fan profile so that the RPM, as you can see on the right side, will be a bit higher. So instead of 1543 RPM, the fans end up spinning at just above 2000. Now, as you can see, the decibel does go up by 4, but still 37 is pretty quiet. You will notice a bit difference. I'm not saying it's not noticeable, but it's not loud. I don't think you can call this loud. However, as you can see, that leads to a 10-degree temperature drop, and that is quite significant. And that might also be enough for GPU Boost 5.0 to perhaps boost the card up to a little bit of higher clock speed, which might give you also a little bit higher performance. Unfortunately, those numbers are not included here, so that's speculation. I cannot really confirm that or deny it. However, what I can say is if you compare that to, for example, in this case, the 3090 Strix BIOS at the top, well, I don't want to, I think it's their default, I guess, because it doesn't have a name, so I will guess that's their default. You can see that the GPU is on our card is 1 degree lower, but especially the noise level, it's a difference of 5 decibels. So where our card maintains a 37 decibel sound level, the Strix does a 42. So, and that is a difference you might also notice. So, yeah, basically what this shows is this is a pretty damn good cooler, the 3090 Gaming X Trio. And again, like if you want to have a bit more lower temperature, you can either download this BIOS that we're going to offer, which is called the low temperature BIOS in this overview. But to be honest, the same can be achieved by tweaking your fan profile or just upping the fan speed a little bit in Afterburner or in Dragon Center in our software that we provide. So if you don't feel comfortable, flashing BIOSes and stuff like that, which honestly, I don't really see the point why you would do that if you can just change the fan profile a little bit and that's it. So you can also do this in software, which is completely safe and no risk whatsoever.
I see some comments in chat. Jordy166 is asking on YouTube, as an MSI gaming employee, do you get a free graphics card on launch?
Nope.
And Twilight15 is asking somewhat similar.
I wish.
Do Peter and Mike get a free 3090 when reviewers return their MSI cards?
Nope.
No, unfortunately not.
Nope.
We indeed wish.
It's all company property, and the most we can expect, and this for me is more than enough and really cool, is that at work we actually get to, well, I want to say play, but work with these cards and test them and see what they can do. And it's not just playing games, of course. We also need to do some other testing. But yeah, I mean you do get to put them through their paces, and it's a hands-on approach. So yeah, it's not in a home environment, but who cares? I mean, yeah, you do get access to the cards when they're available. Because like I said, this bad boy that I've got on my desk here actually arrived today. So it's not like, you know, I've had these for months. That's not the case. Do you guys see much potential performance to come with driver updates? That's always hard to predict, but I mean, looking at, the thing is, I with those kinds of questions, I always look at the past and you know, how that's gone. And driver updates, yeah, they can bring some incremental performance increase, but really the things that have blown us out of the water in terms of performance increase are optimizations. For example, in ray tracing, when you looked at when Turing launched, you know, Battlefield 5, really, if you turned on ray tracing, it was a big hit. But after I think a couple of weeks or a month, they released a patch already, and it was a huge, big difference already. You would get way more FPS in ray tracing. Still not as much as you would when you turn it off. And the same thing with DLSS. So really, if you're looking to the future and seeing, you know, which things will net me the most performance increase, DLSS is a big one. And optimizations in ray tracing and drivers are another one. And if you watch the streams previously about the general stream about 30 series launch and last week as well, we also discussed a very interesting thing called RTX IO. That one might also be a big game changer when it comes to performance. But unfortunately, that is something that probably we'll see, I don't know, we won't see that soon in games, unfortunately. That takes a bit of time to get adapted, and it's still probably, you know, in its infancy or, you know, very early stages at the moment.
JM is asking on YouTube, what happened to MSI's Twin Frozr naming?
Well, yeah. Can you go to the main view? Obviously, we would be. It would be a bit weird if we called these cards Twin Frozr, because it's Twin Frozr is all about two fans, sorry. And these cards, obviously, especially the 3080 and 3090, they have 3, based on, you know, how much cooling they require, and we estimated that with 3 fans, you know, we get the best result. Obviously, if in the future there is a possibility and it makes sense for us to offer a Twin Frozr cooler on a I don't know, a lower end GPU like a 3070. I think at the moment the 3070s that we have announced are also triple fans, at least on the gaming end. So no Twin Frozr on the horizon just yet. But I wouldn't say it's out of the question. It's just we're not sure yet. And again, we have to look at it on a case-by-case basis when it makes sense, and we see that actually a dual fan, a Twin Frozr cooler will do the job just fine, and there's no real benefit to having a triple fan. Then you will find a Twin Frozr. That's pretty much the answer.
I see a comment in Twitch chat, that's over 10K in cards. Unfortunately, not all of the cards that you see right now are 3090s.
No.
We also have
only 2 of them.
The previous generation.
Yeah, these 2 are 3090s. So the gaming X-Trio 3090, and here's a Ventus 3090. This is a Ventus 3080, and this, that's far away. This is a 2080 gaming X-Trio, so Turing card. But I just
previous generation.
Yeah, I put this here also because later on maybe I can do like a closer up comparison for you guys. Because I mean, man, it's a big jump this generation again in on a lot of levels.
Do you know what time it is, Peter?
Oh, I got a feeling. I got a feeling we're gonna give somebody a nice wallet code.
To make someone happy.
That's always one of my favorite moments, but I'll let you do it.
So if you haven't participated yet, go to msi.com/2/insider. There you can go to our giveaway. It will redirect you to Gleam. There you will have several options to participate in the giveaway. The more actions you perform, the bigger chance you will have to win, the more entries you will get. Our first winner for today is Gilo. Congratulations. You won the first $20 Steam wallet code for today.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Keep an eye on your mailbox because we'll email it to you in the coming days. If you didn't win this one, but you already signed up, you don't have to do anything. You will automatically be included in the next drawings as well. If you haven't signed up, I would strongly advise you to do so, because we will have more drawings later on in the stream.
I keep seeing people asking for, have you plugged them both in and slapped an NV bridge on them yet? Like I said before, we actually wanted to do that, but we sadly don't have an NVLink bridge or an SLI bridge for this generation. Because, again, I don't know who said this, if it was last week with Lars, might have been. But we asked if the SLI bridge was the same or different compared to Turing, for example. And I can show you later on, because I have a 2080 on the desk here, which also has an NVLink bridge or an SLI bridge from last generation. And I can, maybe I can actually show you that now. Because then I can show you that there's like a physical difference between the connectors. And I'll use a Ventus 3090, because I mean, the connector will be the same. Let's see, let's make some space. We go to the per stream, yes, yeah. Exactly. Okay, so this is the 3090 Ventus with the SLI bridge. So this is the 30 series SLI fingers, and this, yeah, yes. Yeah. This isn't quite identical. I think this one is a little bit longer than this one, or has a little bit more connectors. Yeah. But as you can see, this one is like one really long connector here, and then a little one on that side. So as you can see, there's like a physical difference. So you wouldn't be, even if you had an SLI bridge for Turing, it wouldn't help you if you wanted to do SLI on a 3090, because it's a different shape. I don't know, the camera's not really, oh, here we go, I think that's better. But yeah, so as you can see, there's like a physical difference between them. So unfortunately, we also have to wait until we get a SLI bridge for 30 series. But yeah, if you guys didn't know that, I guess that's nice to see, or at least to yeah, to know that there is a difference. Oh, there we go. Put that one back. All right. MSI and other brands need to give serious thoughts to the power connectors in order to have a clean build. I mean, yeah, that's always a challenge, and I think there are a lot of different options you can do to do some really neat cable management. I think Mike, you do some builds every now and again on stream as well. I think you've covered some of this sometimes. Also with a case modder, I think last year or something, we had a case modder on stream, and yeah, he also gave
actually did the custom sleeving
exactly
for the PCI Express cable.
Yeah.
But indeed, it's always a little bit of a trade-off, because on the one hand you want to have it look pretty, but on the other hand it needs to be easily compatible with everything, and changing something could easily cause compatibility issues with not only computer cases but also power supplies, motherboards, etc. So yeah, it's
there's a lot more to it than you'd think.
Yeah.
Because not any cable can replace the other. Even it's complicated. But and also, I mean, if you want like the most neat build, go for one of the lower end GPUs. Like I think like in the past, was it a 1650? They had some models that didn't even require any additional connectors. It could just draw all the power from the motherboard.
If you didn't get the OC model, because then you would have a separate connector. Yeah.
But I mean,
but the regular one, indeed.
But that's the thing. I mean, yes, these cards, especially if they have 3 8-pins, I mean, the power cables are going to be in the way a bit. And there are ways to try and make them look neat. Again, right now I just really slapped together a testing rig real quick for you guys. So yeah, it looks atrocious when it comes to cable management. Sorry, I'll take the blame for that one. But yeah, there's not a whole lot we can do about it right now. I didn't even want to do anything about it, to be honest.
I see a question on YouTube from Random Kid. What is this backplate on 3090 cross for? I think he's talking about the cross.
Yeah, wait. I think he's
behind the GPU.
Yeah. Yeah. Do we have a? Can we go? Yeah, there we go. I think you're referring to this thing, right? Like the opening in the backplate, and you see this. Retention bracket, or however you're going to call it. I'm going to call it what it is. It's a leaf spring, and when we get to the teardown, you will see why it's called a leaf spring. But essentially, what this does is it has 4 screws at each of the corners, and that actually connects to the cooler right, on the outside of the GPU here. And what this does is this will increase the mounting pressure. So, in really the shortest terms I can say is it helps to improve cooling even more. That's really the TLDR here. But again, we'll get to the teardown a little bit later, and we'll actually take this thing off so you can actually see what happens and why it's called a leaf spring. Because again, this thing actually applies a lot of pressure and tension to the cooler. But that's in short what it's for, to make sure that the contact between the GPU and the cooler is as good as possible by applying a hell of a lot more pressure than the past. Yeah, favorite. Yeah, everything is great, but the real thing here is there is no stock availability anywhere in the world. This is all. Why is this all when you cannot buy a 3080 GPU? Again, this is the same thing with every generation launch. There's a hell of a lot of demand at the start, and the supply is always limited. Again, if we look at the past, I don't know the current situation exactly, and I'm not going to name any numbers because again, I don't even have the numbers, but. Within a number of weeks or months, usually you will start seeing a little bit more stock coming in, and prices starting to normalize a bit. This is the same for every generation.
I'm quickly going to
The
fix
best thing you can
way,
do is wait.
The close up, so I'll appear here for a second, and now I disappear,
there we go. Yeah,
and now people can hear me here.
You will insert yourself in the close up. Okay, there we go.
Yeah. Quick fix.
Yeah. All right. One quick thing we might want to highlight then, because we see a lot of people asking about.
Yeah, hey, today I also saw a lot of questions about this topic in chat about
the CPU
what
question.
CPU.
Yes.
Yeah.
Will this CPU, whatever, CPU X bottleneck the 3090 or 3080? Last stream we saw the same question. So we tried to make a slide, or at least some kind of, I don't know, I guess a general rule of thumb of how you can kind of discern it, because it really depends on a lot of specific factors. It depends on which CPU you actually have. Is it overclocked, yes or no? Which GPU do you have? Which resolution are you running? And even which game specifically, because it will differ on each of those variations basis. Anyway, Mike, you take it away.
Yeah, so this will sound very strange, but basically the lower resolution you play and the lower settings you play, the faster CPU you need. And that's because the number of frames you're rendering. If you play at lower resolutions and lower settings, you will put less strain on your GPU, which will cause a higher frame rate, but that will cause extra load on your CPU. This also means that if we're going to play at a very high resolution, so for example 4K or even 8K, the difference between different CPUs will be rather small. So a mid-range CPU will perform similar to a high-end CPU on high resolutions and high settings, whereas on low resolutions and low settings, for example, 1080p low on an esports title, that will actually be quite a big difference in between different CPUs. So there you will see a difference between a more entry-level CPU and a high-end CPU. So that can be a little bit confusing. So playing at high settings and high resolutions, that will put more load towards your GPU. Yes. And a lower resolution and lower settings would put more strain on your CPU. And another difference here is AAA titles and esports titles. AAA titles usually prioritize graphics quality, so they usually look very nice. You got a lot of eye candy going on. Which will put a lot of strain on your GPU. Yes. Often these are also the titles with, for example, ray tracing in it, which is very demanding for your GPU. Yes. Esports titles, on the other hand, they really focus on performance. So having the smoothest experience, to really get
competitive edge.
Don't get any a competitive edge basically, and don't get any disadvantage by, for example, having a lower frame rate. Because these are usually also the type of people that will use very high refresh rate screens, for example 240 hertz or even higher nowadays. So for those games, it usually you don't need an extremely high-end GPU, but it does matter what kind of CPU you use because you're pushing out so many frames.
Well, it always matters to some degree, but because there are always like exceptions, and that's why we're saying this is like a general rule of thumb. So this doesn't apply to all cases. You will be able to find exceptions, but in general, and assuming that you've got at least like a mid-range CPU, for example, and are considering to upgrade your GPU, but you, for example, have, I don't know, a 1070 or something. Again, like Mike is saying, if you have a 1080p monitor, it probably doesn't make that much sense to upgrade your GPU.
Depends on what you're coming from.
Save for a few AAA titles. But if you're playing on 1440p or 4K, and are especially want to play those AAA titles at full blast, ultra settings, and high FPS, yes, that's when you get into then it might actually make sense, and you will notice a difference. Because again, I've had friends of mine who, I used to play a lot of CS:GO in the past, and CS:GO is one of those competitive titles, right? And you get the misconception, or people have a misconception that when they say, I'm going to upgrade my graphics card because I play CS:GO at 1080p, because, well, you don't really need to play it at a high resolution if you play competitively. And I'm going to upgrade my graphics card because I want higher FPS. And then they upgrade their graphics card, but their FPS doesn't actually increase.
Because their CPU was probably already the bottleneck.
Yeah, because at high, if you're already running at, I don't know, 200, 300, 400 FPS in CS:GO, which is relatively common if you've optimized things, then the CPU will be the limiting factor. If you have a 1070, even if you put all the settings on max in CS:GO, it's not that graphically intense. Probably at 1080p, your GPU at 1070 is like maybe half, 60% usage. So it's not even being taxed that much. So having a more powerful GPU in that setting doesn't really improve things. So again, we just want to give advice where you guys know what to expect, and don't think, okay, if I'm playing a competitive game and I'm upgrading my GPU to a 3090, whatever, let's get crazy here, and you're expecting to go from 400 to 999, 1000 FPS, that's not how it works. That's not going to happen. So you will end up disappointed, and that's what we want to prevent. So that's why, we want to give this advice. And also, in what kind of settings does it make sense to upgrade? You also made this graph. Yeah,
this is a very simplified graph. Maybe you could move to the side a little bit, because I think you're blocking a little bit of the text.
How about this?
So on the left side, you see a low resolution with low settings, for example, 1080p with low settings. On the other end, you will see a high resolution and high settings. So for example, 4K Ultra. On the left side, you will see that the blue line is a lot higher, because that's the CPU importance, which will be bigger at lower settings, lower resolutions. And the higher your resolution and settings are, the more important your GPU will become, and the less important your CPU will become. So this is just theory. Like Peter already said, there will be a lot of exceptions to this as well, but this is just a general rule of thumb.
For most people, this will be this will ring true, and this will be a good representation of what to expect and what happens.
And Tom's Hardware actually did some nice testing with different CPUs on this is with the 3080. And here you see they tested different games. This is, for example, on low resolution, 1080p with medium settings. And here you see it makes quite a big difference what CPU you're running next to that RTX 3080 graphics card. So from, for example, the Core i3, the 10100, it's quite a big step upwards to the top model in that same generation, the 10900K. And you see that, for example, if you have an even older CPU like the
bottom one, it's an i7
4770K, for example, which is even overclocked a little bit here. There you really see that it does become quite a bottleneck in this situation. And that's because of the low resolution and the relatively low settings. On the other hand, if we go to the next slide, we see the same CPUs with the same GPU, but this time also running the same games, by the way. But in this situation, a 4K resolution with ultra settings. And here you see that all CPUs are actually relatively close to each other. They're all within 10% from each other.
Yeah. There is a small difference between the i7 4770K. So that one is how old is that one? That's like 5-6 years ago, maybe more.
Yeah, 6 at least. I think I run an old 6600K, and that's already 5 years old.
But,
I think
that's a 6 years old CPU.
And I think 6 or maybe even 7.
Yeah, and even that one. I mean, yes, there's a little bit of a gap, like I don't know, maybe 5-6%, but on average. But look at that. I mean, it's still. It's not like it's massively behind all the other high-end and newer CPUs in this scenario.
And even like a very entry-level 10th generation Intel Core processor, like the i3-10100, it's on average it's 95.2 FPS. If you go, for example, to the top model in that generation, the 10900K, it's 96.9. So it's on average it's only a little over 1 FPS difference. Yeah. Whereas if we go back to the previous slide, you saw a huge difference there.
I also see Alpha Duplo asking if we have a slide for 1440p in this regard. No, but it will be somewhere in between.
I think Tom's Hardware does have them. We don't have it
we didn't
right
include
here.
It here.
But if you go to Tom's Hardware, you will definitely find more. And you will also find all the individual results for games.
But what we can already tell you is that it will be somewhere in between this and this one. So the differences will be not as big as on this slide. But they will also not be quite as small as this. So again, it's somewhere in between.
So basically, if we go back to the overview slide, there you can also imagine where the other one, that one, yeah. So 1440p will be in between these two. So for example, for the situation on the left, a low resolution, low settings, you would, for example, consider a 10900K with a 3070 in the future. Then for 1440p, you would, for example, take a Core i7 with, or Ryzen 7 for that matter, with a 3080. And for the situation on the right, the high resolution, high settings, you would, for example, take a lower end CPU. So, for example, a Core i5 or a Ryzen 5 with a 3090 even. So it can be a little bit confusing because many people expect if I want to play at the highest settings and the highest resolution, I need to get the best CPU. But in that situation, it won't give you that much benefit. That much benefit. No, it will not be slower, obviously. So it's fine to combine it. If you want to be safe for every situation, of course, you still want to combine a high-end CPU with a high-end GPU. But if you only play at high resolution, high settings, then invest that money in a GPU. If you play very competitively on 1080p low settings and esports games, then invest in your CPU rather than your GPU. Because you will see that in many situations, for example, a 3080 will be with a good CPU will be faster in that situation than a 3090 with a slower CPU. So invest your money wisely, I would say.
Again, this really comes down to we're trying to give advice where you don't end up disappointed. I guess that's kind of what it comes down to. So if you do choose to spend your hard-earned money on something, we want to make sure you spend it on the right thing that you actually will notice the difference. Because that's the thing, right? When you spend money, it doesn't even matter how much. I mean, per person this differs, but in the end, you want to notice that okay, you spend money on something, but you want to feel the difference, and that we want to make sure that that happens. RTX 4090, you don't need CPU. Ah, this guy's living in 2077.
Will it take NVIDIA that long to come up with a new generation?
I don't know. Maybe we should already start scheduling the stream for that one. I don't know.
Hussein is saying, or buy 3950X with dual RTX 3090. I think then you're quite safe in any situation. But it will cost some money.
I don't know if you will actually notice the dual 3090, because again, NVIDIA will stop making game profiles for SLI, so you might as well just do one 3090. Unless you got the DirectX 12 multi-GPU support, but yeah. needs to be seen how much that will actually you will benefit from that. But yeah. What is the current power draw? Great question. I'm not sure if we have slides for that. Let me quickly check here. Nope, we don't actually.
It's a little bit higher than 3080.
Yeah.
Maybe you can open something up. I think you can find a graph quite easily.
That, or to be honest, I mean, maybe, yeah, we can discuss it, but you can also look at any of the reviews that have gone up by media,
Yeah.
and you know, they will do. They've actually got these really cool tools to measure very exactly the power usage as well from NVIDIA. So yeah, they'll do a much better job at showing you the power usage than we can. But yeah, essentially, I think the power limit for our gaming X-Trio, the 3090, is out of the box set to 370 watts. And it goes up to, I think the max is 380 or 385.
385,
yeah,
I believe.
Yeah, so small bump, not really needed. Anything on, I'm glad you asked, Droopy Piles, anything on PCIe 4 versus PCIe 3? Because that one, yes, we have something for you. Let me see. Here we go. Yeah, again from Tweakers, so I might actually have to duck out of the way here. But overall, the conclusion is it doesn't matter much. With some, I want to say notable exceptions, but some exceptions that might actually even be worth noticing, whereas the others are really, yeah, I mean, they're so small, it's within margin of error. The one that's highlighted below, Shadow of the Tomb Raider 4K Ultra settings. You do get, between PCIe 3 and 4, there's a benefit at PCIe 4.0 of 4.5% FPS. So you go from, for example, 90.7 to 94.8.
And that's the most extreme situation.
Yeah.
So you could say that the benefit of PCI Express 4.0 is still minor.
Yes, I'm going to try and move out of the way as much as I can so you guys can see it. But yeah, I mean, it's, and we've seen several media looking into this in a quite detailed level. I think Hardware Unboxed also did a really excellent video where they even compared times 16 with times 8, which in some cases can happen if you have multiple PCIe extension cards or devices on your motherboard, especially I think Intel, right? Then even the primary slot switches from times 16 to times 8. And even there, yeah, there is some impact, but it really, especially the times 8, I think that one showed the most impact. But as long as you only have a graphics card and no other expansion cards in your PC, then either PCIe 3 or 4, it doesn't really have that much of a significant difference yet. But again, like I said, last week we...
This is only gaming, by the way. This might be completely different in other workloads. So if you, if you're going to do productivity workloads, I haven't seen any specific reviews on that yet, but of course they will be there in the future. But for gaming, don't expect a huge benefit yet from PCI Express Gen 4 at this point.
And by the way, I do want to kind of make a reference to last week as well, where we had Lars from NVIDIA on the stream, and he also explained a little bit about RTX I/O. And basically, the TLDR version is that really, at the moment, your FPS and loading can be bottlenecked by the CPU, because everything first has to go from your storage, you know, the game takes up a lot of space, has to go through the CPU, and then it steers it to the GPU. But the CPU is already doing a lot of unpacking of materials, so it takes a lot of the load, and then things go to the GPU for actual frames processing and stuff like that. But then what RTX I/O will do is it will kind of bypass the CPU in a lot of cases, so things can go directly to the GPU, which is much better and efficient at these tasks of unpacking the game materials, like the textures and stuff like that. So it will have much less of an impact. However, that might use more of the PCIe bandwidth. So when that comes into play, you might actually see that PCIe 4.0 might offer more of a benefit. So again, quite interesting, but not something we can actually show or test right now.
Let me see if we have some more questions in chat. I see some people talking about 3080 crashing. I read some about that too. I expect that to be a driver issue. We're very short after the launch, so
we don't know. We're also, I don't want to. I mean, I don't want to say it's a driver issue because we don't know that it is.
No, we don't know.
We're also investigating
what
it.
I expect it to be.
Yeah, we're also investigating it. Some users have said that by slightly lowering the clock speed, so underclocking it by, for example, 50 megahertz or 25, that stopped it from crashing. But we're not sure if that's like a foolproof fix.
It's still too early to give a definite answer for this.
So we have to investigate that further, and of course we'll see what's needed to fix it. I'm
sure NVIDIA is also investigating this to find out what the cost could be.
Techneil is asking, speaking of I/O, currently you have an GTX 1080 Gaming X, excellent card. Do any of the new 30 series have more than 4 display outputs? At the moment, no. At least 3080 and 3090 not. 3070 I'm not sure. You could maybe find on our website. Maybe yeah, I'm actually see this is the thing I usually do then. I just go and try and find out. But yeah, you could check on our website, but not that I know at the moment.
I believe for all our cards have, I believe, 3 times DisplayPort and 1 HDMI.
Yes.
HDMI 2.1.
2.1 indeed.
So yeah, so 4 outputs. In
to be fair, even if you had more than 4 display outputs, I don't think you can use more than 4 at the same time. So I don't know. I mean, again, it really depends on what your purpose is and why you would like more display outputs. Do you want more different ones? Like, you know, would you like to have 2 HDMI instead of 3 display ports, or, you know, so more HDMI, or do you want to use more monitors simultaneously? Because I think the limit right now is still 3 or 4, I think 4 monitors simultaneously. So yeah, for that purpose, it doesn't really make a difference. You could add more connectors, but you wouldn't be able to use 5 monitors simultaneously. How many percents between the 3090 and 3080? We covered this at the beginning of the stream, but I'll gladly repeat it. In gaming performance, at least, it seems to be around 10 to 15% difference. So the 3090 is about 10 to 15% faster than a 3080.
Yeah.
On average.
It depends a little bit on the situation, of course.
Yep. Any pointers on coupling all that with Gen 4 versus Gen 3 SSDs? Ooh, Mike, I think that's one for you.
Yeah, later on we'll go deeper into this as well. I don't have definite answers for this yet, but I will also dive into this, especially with the upcoming console generations as well.
Yes.
They also utilize storage in a different way, and part of this we will also see with the RTX I/O, for example. That this technology will also come to PCs. So later on, when that's the case, I will definitely dive into this, and I will also incorporate this in our live streams to demonstrate you how it works and also what kind of difference it makes. But it is expected that, of course, because of these technological developments that come with the new Xbox and PlayStation as well, that faster storage will also become more important in game development and also for PC gaming.
Yeah. Because traditionally, I mean, I've seen a lot of tests. Yes, it makes some difference, but in a lot of games right now, you won't notice the difference that much from a SATA SSD. I mean, this rig I'm using here also has just a very plain.
Yeah, you might get a little bit better like loading times for very big levels, but you won't see a huge FPS increase, and maybe that will be slightly different in the future.
Yeah. You know what time it is, Mike?
I definitely do. It's time for another giveaway. So if you haven't participated yet, go to msi.com/2/insider. There you will find a link to our Gleam giveaway. You can perform several actions there. The more actions you perform, the bigger chance you will have to win. If you have already signed up for the giveaway today during this live stream, then no need to do it again, because you will automatically be included in the next drawings. And our next winner for today is, I don't know how to pronounce this, but Aksutin, congratulations.
Congrats.
AXUTIN. You won our second $20 Steam wallet code. And we will email it to you in the coming days, so keep an eye out on your mailbox.
Yep.
If you didn't win this time, make sure to sign up, because we will do some more drawings later on in the stream as well.
Correct. All right. So I think that's it pretty much for this. We're not going to bore you with more slides. What we're going to do now is I'm going to fire up a game, namely Shadow of the Tomb Raider. And once that's fired up, we're going to switch to it. And then, yeah, we're going to show you some actual in-game footage, some gameplay. Little disclaimer though, we are using a protocol called NDI to capture this, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to capture it at 4K. So, but NDI does use a small bit of resources from the graphics card itself to encode everything and then send it over. It actually uses the UTP or the network protocol to send it to the capture to the streaming PC. Anyway, so this will impact performance just a little bit. Last week we had the same thing. We noticed that if we disable NDI, we actually get a bit higher scores, but it's still okay to show you a little bit of how it goes. You can, I think you can switch to the capture now. Here we go. So, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, I've got a native 4K screen right in front of me. So we're going to be benchmarking at 4K, not 8K, this game. And let me just, oh yeah, I've got the overlay at the top right for Afterburner running. So here you can see the GPU, it's in the menu, it's already being taxed to about 100%, but as you see, it's like just about 60 degrees, so it's not really hot. And running just switching a bit between 1980, 1950 megahertz, so it's quite nice and toasty. It's using about 7 gigs of the available 24 gigs of VRAM, so that's not that much. And I've also, just so you can see the comparison, the CPU temperature usage, but of course, which CPU was this using again? I'm not sure. It's an AMD one. So it'll have a lot of cores.
It's a 3800X.
Oh, there you go.
On an MPG B550 gaming carbon Wi-Fi mode.
So honestly, if I would put all the cores here, you would have a big list. But to simplify things, this is like an average, so don't read too much into that. And like the average megahertz, again, this differs per core. So the FPS, obviously, and this is like the real-time FPS number. And here it's also in a graph, so you can actually see if there's a lot of dips or how consistent the FPS is. What CPU you use? Mike just mentioned it.
Yeah, Ryzen 7 3800 XT.
Yep. How many cores does that one have?
8 cores, 16 threads. So 8 cores with simultaneous multi-threading.
Yeah. Okay. So without further ado, let's get into some benchmarking.
Avoid the noise asking why not use a real capture card. We do have a capture card, but the one that we currently have only goes up to 1080p, and 1080p is not. Yeah, so that's not really a challenge for a 3090.
No.
So we wanted to do some testing in 4K resolution. That's why we're currently using NDI. In the future, we hope to upgrade our capture card as well, so we can also do that in 4K to the capture card.
Because it's a valid point, but I mean, up until the 20 series, I mean, you could do some 4K, but I mean, 1080p and then rendering things at a bit higher resolution would do. But now, indeed, it's more relevant to do things at 4K. Anyway, as you can see, 4K resolution here, DirectX 12 obviously on. DLSS I've turned off, and I'll tell you why. Because if you turn DLSS on, it actually uses less video RAM memory. So we want to make the setting as challenging as possible in the 4K setting in this game for the 3090. Again, DLSS will render the scene, the frames at a lower resolution, which also means it will use lower resolution textures and then upscale it. So again, that tends to lead to lower VRAM usage, which is great if you want to get better performance, because again, if I would enable this, probably I would get better performance. But in this case, we want to make it as heavy as possible as we can for the card. As you can see, it's a 3090 here. And SMAA is even on the highest setting 4 times. Let's see, HDR. Well, unfortunately, this monitor cannot do that. So I don't even think I can turn that on. We actually use a custom preset here because there is an extreme preset, but that one actually is not quite as taxing as this one, because this one actually puts everything on ultra, 16 times anisotropic filtering, ultra ray trace shadow quality, HBAO plus. Yeah, is a more expensive but even better looking option, as it says on the right side. So it should be the most taxing one. Depth of field high, level of detail ultra, yada yada yada. Everything on high, everything on. This is like balls to the wall as you can get. Let's run the benchmark, see what happens. And I mean, I see people laughing because lol, advertising 8K. Well, we showed some benchmarks before where, yeah, it runs games at 8K. Unfortunately, we don't have an 8K monitor, so we can't show you that live. However, what I will do is we've got a benchmark coming up as well, Superposition by Udingen, which is free to download, by the way, if you want to do that test yourself at home. And that one you can actually let it render at 8K. So we are going to do that in a minute. But first, let's see how the test for Tomb Raider goes, Shadow of the Tomb Raider. So it's about, yeah, in the high 30s. I remember doing, because we tested this right before the stream as well, and I think it was well over 40. So there is quite a bit of impact from the NDI streaming, but you know, there's at the moment not really a way around that. More to the point, right at the top on the right side, you can see, I don't know if my mouse will be, no, I can't show my mouse pointer at the moment. Anyway, GPU is being fully taxed at 100% usage. Clock speeds is, well, around 1900s. The temperature is 65, I just saw 66, but we can look back after this benchmark and see in the logs basically for Afterburner what the top temperatures and stuff were that it reached. Memory usage, as you see, and this is the big point here, in this setting, specifically, you get, it uses 11,600 megabytes. So about, well, it's almost going 12. So it's almost 12 gigs of memory using here. Now it's just back to 11. But again, this is like one of the most taxing scenarios we could find in this game with the highest memory usage. CPU is, yeah, I mean, 60 degrees. And we've got the stock cooler on here. I can show you later on as well. It's just the stock cooler from AMD that you can actually get with the boxed cooler, if I'm correct. Or the boxed CPU.
This is the 3800 XT. That one comes without a cooler.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
But it
Fair
is
enough.
the Wraith Prism cooler,
Yes.
the one that comes with, for example, the 3700X, 3800X, and 3900X.
The point is more, it's not like a really high-end cooler. It's not a water block or something.
This is just a regular stock AMD cooler that comes with some of the CPUs,
Yes.
and the CPU runs at stock speeds.
Yep.
But at this resolution and at these settings, you won't really notice a difference whether you're using, for example, a Ryzen 5 3600 or even a Ryzen 9 3950X. It will barely make any difference because this is really GPU limited if you're running these settings and resolutions.
Yeah. And just for the sake of it, after this one, I might see if I can just enable DLSS so you guys can actually see how much it increases the FPS and potentially decreases the memory usage. So I think we're pretty much, yeah, here we go. I think we finished this benchmark here. And here we go. So on the right side, I'm actually sitting in front of it a little bit, but average FPS 41. And the memory usage was, well, as you saw, was about 11 gigs, maybe almost up to 12.
Interesting question in YouTube chat.
Yes.
Do we know the room temperature? What is it currently set to?
Good question. I don't have a thermometer here, but
you should be able to see it on the wall.
well, there is an air conditioning, but again, you know, there's me, there's a whole lot of lights, there's a system pumping out heat. There is an air conditioner here. I'm not even sure if it's on, but I know it's set to about 23.
23.
23 or
yeah, you're always cold, so you probably increase the temperature.
I always do that indeed. So it's 23 degrees, but I'm willing to bet that the temperature here around the air around this is actually quite a bit hotter. I can feel You know, just putting my hand over the GPU here, I can feel a lot of heat coming off of that, which is what it's supposed to be doing, obviously. But yeah, so I'm willing to bet that this area here around the build I'm running is a bit hotter. So that will be 25, 26 degrees, I guess. Yeah, I'm sitting, I don't know if I can move out of the way of this one. Here we go. So here you see some minimum and max and average scores. I don't know if it's clear for you guys. Oh, you guys cannot see my mouse pointer, can you? Can you? I don't think. No. Oh, okay. Well, in the bottom right, so you can see minimum of, let's see, GPU. Oh, no, actually, these are, okay, a bit confusing numbers, I guess, because this is what is being rendered by the CPU and the GPU separately. But anyway. On average, I think the FPS 41 on the most taxing of scenarios and 11 gigs of usage. The temperature, let's check the logs. Here we go. GPU temperature, here we go. So it went up to 65. This was still in the menu. I think this was the test here. So 60, well, the max it says here, max 66. So 66 degrees is the max temperature it reached. The usage was pretty much constantly at 99, even in the menu. As you can see here, it's 99% usage. Yeah, front bus usage, memory usage. I'm just trying to see the core clock. Oh yeah, here we go. So core clock, it was well near 1900. It fluctuated a little bit, but I think pretty much consequently above 1900 is pretty much safe to say. Yeah, and fan speeds, let's see, this is percentage, by the way. So the fan speed was 30, just, you know, in the menu, 50%, so about 50% fan speed. So yeah, not high at all. This card didn't really break a sweat in this scenario, I guess you could say. So what we'll do now is we will turn on, we'll leave everything the same. But just for the sake of comparison, I will now turn on DLSS. I need to apply the changes. Yep, okay. And then I will run the benchmark again. So remember, 41 FPS and about 11 to 12 gigs of VRAM usage. Let's see what it does. Add some overclock. Actually, I don't want to get into that right now, but we might do a stream at some point where we try some overclocking. Okay, so straight off the bat, you can see, I think in the previous run, it started out between 30 and 40, and it's already up to 70 plus FPS. Okay, 60 is dipping down a little bit now, so this scenario is a bit more taxing. Memory usage it's down a little bit, but not that much. So it's just over 10 now. Just over 10 gigabytes being used. Temperature 64, 99% usage. Core clock is quite nicely, actually quite close to 2 gigahertz there. Not too shabby. This is 4K, by the way, yeah, just to be clear, this is a 4K scenario. We don't have an 8K monitor handy, and I don't even know if we could capture that kind of bandwidth at the moment, but we would have to do a pre-recorded one, and we really wanted to do everything live, so yeah, there's no pre-recorded stuff here.
I see a question in chat. Will the 3080's 10 gigabytes of VRAM will be a limiting factor for future-proofing your system?
It really depends what you call future-proofing.
Still hard to say right now.
I mean, here's the thing. I remember back in the 900 series time frame. This was like 2014. Yeah, I think so. 2014, 2015. In every generation, people will try to find the limits of the hardware, and if you search hard enough, you will find scenarios where yes, it might not be enough memory. Even for a 3090, if you go and find productivity benchmarks, you probably will find some that will not even have...
That can use everything that it has.
That will you know, will be able to use more than 24 gigs of VRAM. That doesn't mean that in your day-to-day gaming experience, especially not on 1440p resolution, for example, it's very unlikely that you will run into that being an issue.
And it's always a little bit complicated because it's more than just memory size. For example, a 2080 Ti has got more VRAM than a 3080, but it's not the GDDR6X yet, so it has less memory bandwidth. So in the end, sometimes less but faster VRAM can give you better results than more and slower.
Yes.
So it's still hard to say right now also what will happen in game development and how much VRAM future games will use, especially with the new technologies coming up with, for example, RTX IO, but also the technologies that we see on gaming consoles.
Yeah.
That will, of course, also be incorporated on PC gaming in the future as well. So it's a bit too early to tell whether or not that will be a limiting factor.
Alpha Duplo was asking, how can the FPS be this much higher with DLSS enabled? Because the base resolution it's rendering on is still 4K. That's actually where you're wrong. The base rendering resolution will be lower, so it will be more, I guess, 1440p. I'm not 100% sure how it works, but the GPU will actually render the frames at a lower resolution, and that's where the tensor cores, the AI cores, come in, because they will help to then upscale that image artificially, each of the frames, to the 4K image that you see here. And that's where you get the performance gain, because the GPU actually doesn't have to, the CUDA cores, if you will, they don't have to render each frame at 4K. They only have to render it at a lower resolution. And then the tensor cores, which are separate, physically separate cores to the CUDA cores, they can do the rest of the work to upscale it back to 4K and put it on your screen. And that's where the performance gain lies. So as you can see, before it was, what was it, 41, right? Average FPS, and now it's 73.
I see a comment in chat, AK Extreme is saying on YouTube, Mike, what happened to your tone? Are you yawning? No, I actually have a cold right now. That's also why I'm currently joining from home.
Yeah.
And why I'm not in the office.
Yes.
Of course, still a little bit complicated with the corona situation. If you have certain symptoms that could be linked to corona, then it's usually advised to stay home. It's probably just a cold. But just to be safe, I'm currently joining from home. And that's also why I might sound a little bit different than normally, because my nose is blocked.
Anyway, so big performance boost. I also saw Alpha Duplo saying, okay, got it, but can you set the, I think basically your question comes down to, can you set the base rendering resolution for DLSS? I don't know, this might differ per game, but in this case, no. And I think in general, no. I think this is like an algorithm in the background that on a per game basis, NVIDIA has determined how that works. So actually, no, I have no control over when I enable DLSS. If I wanted to render natively at 720p or 1080p or 1440p, whatever, it does it automatically. All I can do is enable or disable DLSS. That's pretty much it. All right, so that's one benchmark down. Maybe have a closer look on the cards.
Yeah, good idea.
Because maybe we can show some real life comparisons. I don't want to take the maybe we can go back to the there we go. I don't want to take the 3090 gaming off just yet. One, because it's quite hot, so I don't want to touch it with my hand quite yet. And secondly, because we want to do a bit more benchmarks after this as well. So if I remove it, then it's going to be, I have to reboot everything and reconfigure NDI and stuff like that. So let's not do that. But let's do some quick comparisons here. Maybe for starters, I can show you guys what I was talking about a little bit earlier, which was a close-up view. Here we go. Ooh. Oh, I just dropped the box, guys. I did a Linus. Whoops. Let's see. Because again, this is the Wraith cooler that the Wraith Prism?
Yeah, the Wraith Prism.
Okay,
yeah.
I don't know which word came
Wraith
first.
Prism. It's
Wraith
called.
Prism. Okay, so as you can see here, it's a quite basic cooler. There's nothing that special about it for the CPU that we're running. And here is the really nice motherboard as well.
MPG B550 gaming carbon Wi-Fi in this situation.
Yes. And there's 2 sticks of, I think this is similar to last week, 2 sticks of 8 gigs memory, so I think it's together it's 16 gigs.
I think it's DDR4 3200 megahertz,
yeah, I believe. Yeah, Corsair in this case with, of course, RGB, because, you know, you need that.
Extra FPS?
Yes, yeah. And as you can see here, also the backplate for the gaming X Trio.
Don't show the cable mess in our studio.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man. I was looking at that as well. And let's see. I mean, okay. I think we can switch back to the normal, to the main view now. Yeah, there we go. Because I can probably just show you just as well here. All of this is running from a really basic 2.5-inch SSD. I think this is 240 gigs. It's an older model, I guess, but it's just running on SATA port. And of course, as you can see here, it's the same power supply unit or PSU that we were using last week. So this is the
MPG A750.
I haven't got those names into my system quite yet, but it's the 750 watts version, which again is powering this rig, and it's plenty. It's more than enough. Behind the scenes, yeah, we might do some behind the scenes if you guys want to see that. Honestly, it's messy. I don't know if you guys want to see that. It's not glorious in any way. It's a lot of cables and green screen. There's the title of that stream. If we're gonna do that, cables and green screens. Let's see. Yeah, some comparisons. So let's start off with 2 Ventus cards. This is the 3080 Ventus I've got in my hands right here, and as you can see, the display ports. This
Can
one.
you turn the camera a little bit?
This one.
I think a little bit better with the light.
Yeah. I tried to put it out of the way as much as possible, but I think this should be better a little bit. Okay. So in displays, it's display outputs. I mean, it's pretty much the same. This one is the 3090. Sometimes they're hard to tell apart in some ways, because even if, as you can see, the cooling itself, the thickness of the cooler is pretty much the same. They are almost impossible to tell apart by watching the cooler itself and the size of the cooler. Also here, let me see. Let's put them on top of each other, but as you can see...
There's a question in chat.
Same size.
PSU, when are they available?
Oh, you can answer that one.
I think a little bit over a month. It depends a little bit on your region, but approximately end of October, beginning of November, it should be available in most regions. If you want a more specific date, please check with your local retailer, because it might differ per region when they will arrive.
Yeah.
Around that date, we will also do a dedicated live stream about these power supplies, and we will show you the influence that certain things have on power consumption, like overclocking and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Different graphics cards, different CPUs. So if you want to learn more about that, then make sure to check it out. So it will be approximately, let's say beginning of November.
Yeah. I see some people saying the 3080 is a little bit smaller than the 3090. I don't know. It doesn't look like it to me. Maybe on the website, if you compare them, the size might be a little bit different, but I don't believe there's that much of a difference.
Interesting question on YouTube. Can you eat them?
I mean,
They might be a bit chewy, but...
I don't know. I do want to sink my teeth into them, but honestly, I don't think... Let's stay within the narrative. I think I would bite off more than I can chew. But anyway, when it comes to power connectors, and you might be surprised to find this, but actually both Ventus cards use 2 dual 8-pins. Let's see. Yeah, I think you can quite clearly see that. Or am I lying here? Wait, is one a 6-pin? No. Actually, there are 2.
No, it's both dual 8-pin.
Yeah. So also, as you can see, they're quite identical. Really, the only ways that you can tell them apart is that the 3090 here, this one, has the SLI finger. And of course, the backplates are different. So those are the two main ways and easiest ways to tell them apart. So the shinier of the backplates, let me see if I can quickly, there we go. So this one, this is the 3090 with the metal backplate. And it has the heat pipes between the backplate and the memory modules on the back of the PCB. Maybe I can show you in a little bit so I can remove it. And this is the 3080 with the graphene composite backplate. And we do want to stress that it's not a completely graphene backplate, it's a composite, which means it's a mix of graphene and plastic in this case. So.
Jason is asking, does your 750 watt power supply has 3 8-pin power connectors? It actually has 6.
Yes.
So the 650 watt model has 4 8-pin power connectors, and both the 750 and 850 watt model have 6 8-pin power connectors in total. So plenty of 8-pin power connectors.
But don't make the mistake of trying to run two 3090s on it, because I don't think that will go down well.
No,
that's not recommended.
That will be too much for a 750 watt power supply.
I think this is as good a time as any to pull these out. These are two separate backplates actually, and these are from the gaming card, so not the Ventus, but the gaming, as you can see. They still have the shiny plastic on it. Maybe I can wait. Maybe I'll do one of these for you. Let's see. I don't know. Wow, this is. I'm trying to find an edge here where I can peel it off. Hello? I don't have that big fingernails, so... Okay, I think I found one. Here we go.
I know people in chat always love the sound of peeling off plastic of new products.
So stop.
I don't know why,
so stop
but
talking. You were talking through it.
I have another one.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I'll stay silent for that one.
Yeah. Anyway, so this is the graphene one, as you can see. And especially on the back side, this is also this structure, as you can see on the inside, is also where it gets a lot of its strength. So actually, there's some flex, but it's definitely not like plastic. It also doesn't feel like plastic. It's a lot cooler than plastic. Like literally colder. It feels colder. Okay, so this is the metal one with on the inside, as you can see, the really flat heat pipes. And these have the purpose of, as you can see here, there are some thermal pads on here as well. There's some protective tape, so we can actually, if we want, we can pull that off and then actually apply it to a graphics card. But I got these sent separately. And as you can see, these will cover the memory modules here, located on several places of the card, but especially the ones on the side. Where I think most of them are located. Those ones will then be able to transfer their heat directly to these heat pipes, and that heat will then be transported across the surface of the backplate. So that's also why the 3090, like I have here, if you're running it and you've been running benchmarks, don't think that the backplate will be cool. It actually will get hot, and that's what it's supposed to do, because that's when you know it's working as intended. It's actually taking some,
basically absorbing
the heat. Absorbing the heat. And then if you have airflow in your case, that will then function like a passive heat sink, so that will help to disperse some of the heat. There you go. Anyway, okay, so let's do the ASMR bit. Let's see,
I'll stay silent this time.
Yes, I'll start from this side. And this is the aluminum backplate, so I'm going to peel that one. Here we go. How was that? Here we go. Well, and this is the aluminum backplate, which also it's a bit of a matte finish this time around, so it's not quite as shiny as, for example, I think I had a yeah. Wait, maybe I can get it. I have a 20 series backplate, which I guess you guys will recognize, right, with the dual brushed finish, also quite nice in its own right. But then this one's also really really nice with the more matte finish. Anyway, so yeah, you can see also this backplate, if you compare it to, see if we can do a direct comparison a little bit to the metal and the plastic one. I don't know if you guys can easily see this, but I'm going to attempt it. as you can see, the top backplate, this is the graphene composite backplate. It's thicker, obviously, than the metal one. So the metal one is a bit thinner. And if I want to flex, I mean, this is the metal one, and because it's not that thick, I mean, it still has these heat pipes, don't forget that. So that adds to the rigidity a little bit. But the backplate by itself, I mean, it's rigid, but you can still flex it a little bit, as you can see, if you really try. But again, these things are bolted up and down the graphics card, so once they're mounted on the graphics card, you don't get much flex from it, because it's the whole structure and all the screws holding it together, right? So it's just part of the whole structure. By itself, it might be a bit bendy, but the graphics card itself is definitely doesn't really show any flex whatsoever. But if I try to do the same thing to our graphene composite backplate, I mean, there is also some flex, but to be honest, and I'm applying pretty much the same amount of force here, there isn't that much flex. It's really quite sturdy. And again, don't forget, the same story applies here. All the screws are going through the backplates at different spaces on the card, and then through the card into the heatsink or through the PCB. And that just adds to the strength. So again, it's, yeah, don't think it's just a flimsy backplate, because it's stronger than you think. Certainly stronger than I expected, because I also thought, okay, let's feel it, and this was stronger than I expected, I have to say. We also hope in the coming times, and we're actually working on this, to see if we can do some more, let's say, scientifically correct testing, like I said. For example, see if we can apply the exact same amount of force on both of the backplates while they are suspended on both sides. So you can actually see how much they flex at the same amount of weight. But also, for example, some thermal imaging based on like a real-world scenario on a graphics card bench, running the same benchmark with the same amount of heat applied to it on the same GPU. And then you can actually see how much heat the backplate takes from the graphics card, because that also is like from the point of do they actually serve the purpose of transferring heat and helping to cool the graphics card. That's pretty much the only piece of evidence that really I think can show if it's working or not. Anyway, we'll hope in the future we don't have that right now, but we hope in the future we do have that. So we're working on that. So that's the back plates. Maybe I can also show you guys. Let's see, which one did we have?
Jason is asking, will the 750 watt power supply come in white with white cables? We don't have plans at this point, but I will definitely discuss it to see what's possible.
Yeah. Let's see. All right, if we can compare the, so this is the 2080 gaming X-Trio, and this is the 3090 Ventus. So as you can see, actually the gaming seems to be a little bit wider. No, actually it's about the same, I guess. It looks wider because the gaming cooler is a bit taller. But in terms of how many slots they take, I guess both of them are around 2.5.
Thickness is kind of similar.
Yeah, 2.5 or 2.7 maybe. So it's similar. As you can see, both use the anti-bending brackets, because both are, or this one actually rather, here we go. Because both are relatively heavy cards when it comes to the thermal design. And I mean, we can also compare this one to the gaming, but then I'll need to take the close-up cam again. Maybe actually I'll do this when we're done with the benchmarks, or maybe we'll just do one more and then start doing the teardown, if that's okay with you guys. Because
Alpha Duplo is asking,
I just saw the time.
If the metal backplate is sold separately.
No.
Or how does it work? No, it depends on the model.
Yes, it comes with so the 3090, both the gaming X-Trio 3090 and the Ventus, which I've got here, they out of the box both come with the metal backplates with the heat pipes, because the 3090 is currently at least is the only model that has the memory modules on the back of the PCB, so that actually requires more cooling, and that's why we included these backplates with the heat pipes attached to it that directly touch and cover the memory modules and help to cool them. On 3080, both gaming and Ventus use the composite graphene backplate that you can see here, which also, again, we'll show more information about it. I know a lot of people are skeptical about it, and that's understandable. It's something new. We'll do our best to provide a lot of data from testing as well to show you guys, hey, you know, this is what it actually does. Even, you know, we also invite media to do tests on it because obviously it's already there, so you can do it.
See, good question on YouTube from Sufyan is asking, do both cards have a different Torx fan?
Yes, actually, so that is a good point. Yeah, the gaming card is running at the moment, but this one I can show. This is the Ventus, and both the 3080 and 3090 Ventus have the Torx 3.0 fan, so that's the same fan that you will find on, and I've got it here actually, on last generation's gaming cards. So as you can see, these are the same Torx 3.0 fans, very recognizable for the two differently shaped fan blades. So one is a little bit more curved, so the one I've got my finger on right now has a bit of a dip at some point in the blade, which is yeah, has an aerodynamic effect. I won't go into that as much as I usually would. And on the other fan blade, it has these trims, as you can see, these little edges standing up. Again, for certain aerodynamic effects. And on the Gaming X Trio, the 2080, you will see the exact same thing. So the Ventus is actually using the same fans that last generation's gaming cards were using. And on the new Gaming X Trio that I've got here, and I'll show you that a little bit later when the fans are not spinning and not benchmarking, those fans are a little bit different. That's Torx fan 4.0 rather. And those have a little bit different fan, yeah, look a little bit different, are an iteration, an improvement on Torx fan 3.0.
And that's usually what you see with our graphics cards, that gaming always gets the newest generation of fans. So for example, in the previous generation, you saw Torx 3.0 on the gaming cards, not on the Ventus. And this generation, you see Torx 3.0 on the Ventus and Torx 4.0 on the gaming.
Yeah.
So in that sense, the gaming gets the newest fan technology.
Yeah. All right, so I've got one more benchmark set up, and then I'll stop and start tearing the gaming apart as well. Not sure. Oh, here we go. Yeah. So I've chosen to do Superposition. This is a free benchmark that you can download by Unigine. And I've chosen this one specifically because it can also do an 8K optimize. So basically it will simulate or render the benchmark at running at 8K. What pretty much this card is meant for. But as you can already see, the prediction of VRAM usage is only just above 6 gigs of usage. So it's, yeah, it doesn't even come close to this one. Even it indicates 24.5 gigabytes of VRAM available. Anyway, let's run that, and I'm not sure. I hope. Oh, I think Afterburner should show up when. Yeah, here we go. When I start running it as well. So again, FPS, it's an indication of performance, kind of. But again, don't forget, this is also being hampered a little bit by the NDI capture process. I think more importantly, what you want to look for is the GPU usage, the temperature, the clock speeds that it attains, and yeah, the overall performance pretty much.
While we do this, I think it's time for another winner.
I think you're right.
So if you haven't participated in the giveaway yet, go to msi.com/insider. We will be giving away several $20 Steam Wallet codes today. If you have already signed up, no need to do it again. And let's go to our next winner for today. And that will be Ooh, complicated name again. Same tower. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but congratulations. You also won a $20 Steam wallet code. Keep an eye out on your mailbox because we will email it to you in the coming days.
Yeah. All right. So as you can see during this benchmark, and again, these are short, relatively short benchmarks. So if you would leave the game running for a couple of hours, then that's when you would get more towards the 70 degrees probably if you really stress the benchmark. But in this case, 99% usage, about 61 degrees is relatively low. Dipping just below 1900 megahertz in this case as well. Memory usage, it's about almost 7 gigs. Not that much. And this is, I guess, also the most taxing setting that we can choose in this specific benchmark. So the 3090 doesn't really have any issues doing this, which is kind of to be expected because this is this generation's, at least up until now, the most powerful, the flagship, the most powerful GPU that you can get, or that NVIDIA has to offer. At least on the consumer market. Yeah, core clock is dropping a bit. I see some guys also notice that. Again, you will notice that in some games or benchmarks, this will differ. Obviously, the core clock is not dropping because of a high temperature, because 64, 65 degrees is not high at all. But I guess there's something else causing this. Not really sure what. But as you can see, again, this is really a card that's that has no trouble keeping the 3090, which is a friggin' beast. Let's not kid ourselves. It has no trouble whatsoever keeping it cool and being silent while doing it as well. Yeah, as you can see here, I mean, there's a score here. If I were to disable NDI, run it again, I would probably get maybe something closer to 8K, maybe even over 8K. So don't read too much into this score. It will be relatively low compared to other 3090s. But again, this is due to the NDI processing that it's doing simultaneously for the purpose of the live stream. Yeah.
Question on Twitch from Alpha Duplo. Which BIOS are you currently running on the card?
This is the out of the box, the default BIOS, because again, I was considering maybe running the other BIOS that you saw.
This is what you could consider the quiet BIOS,
yeah, the cooler BIOS, the one with the higher fan speeds. But to be honest, I wanted to give a representation of what you get out of the box. Again, I did mention that we have decided to offer a BIOS if you want that has a more aggressive fan curve, I think you would call it. So that means that the RPM will ramp up a little bit higher and faster to keep the temperatures lower. In the tests that we saw, it was for example, a 10-degree difference under load. So instead of 77 degrees, you would end up with 67 degrees, which is a big difference. And that might allow performance to be boosted up a little bit higher. Whether or not you would notice or how many percent, I don't know. It didn't say. So that's difficult to judge. But it might be a couple of percent. It won't be like 10 or anything like that.
Mr. Masterbox is saying 65 degrees on an open bench is not representative of temps in a system. Of course, that depends very much on what case you're using, how many case fans you're using, how good your airflow is. So that can indeed definitely differ inside a system.
Yeah.
Baltic Seal is saying, well, I just noticed Mike is 56 kilometers from the office. Does he drive that distance every day? Yes, I do.
Pretty much.
Anil is asking, I'm assuming you're using a 10900K. No, we're currently using a Ryzen 7 3800 XT, but on these resolutions, you won't see too much of a difference.
Have you guys run MSI Afterburner OC scanner on this yet? Brian? No, actually. One, because we didn't have that much time, so we had to pick and see what we wanted to test, and there was only a few things we could do before the stream. Secondly, because as far as I know, it's not 100% stable yet, the OC scanner. This is still, I think, under construction or being worked on. It might work. I don't want to risk having it crash live on stream because I know it's not 100% stable yet. By the way, I've just started another benchmark again.
Sufyan is asking how about ambient temperature. I believe it was 23 degrees Celsius, right?
I'm willing to bet it's higher than that because again, the air around this bench here is much higher.
In most of the room.
Most of the room is about it's about set to 23. Yeah, exactly. So indeed, this is the highest ray tracing card capable of ray tracing right now that we have. So I didn't want to waste the opportunity to run a ray tracing benchmark. Port Royal indeed. Again, it's probably going to turn out a little bit lower than if I would disable NDI, but for the sake of it, I didn't want to show it. Note that GPU temperatures, 60 degrees. I guess that's because it's mostly the ray tracing cores that are being taxed here, and not all of the CUDA core capacity. But yeah, and it's about 7, as you can see also in this benchmark, about 7 gigs of memory usage. So again, not that much compared to what it has.
Ryan Gaming is asking, is the RTX 3090 Gaming X Trio water coolable? Depends on the vendors that make the water blocks for these cards, but usually you see over time they will also come with water blocks for custom PCB models, like for example the Gaming X Trio. So probably in the future there will be water block manufacturers that will make water blocks for this card. Yes. And I would assume so.
That's the thing, but I mean, in the past we also offered Seahawk and Seahawk EK models. At the moment we don't, and I'm saying at the moment because I don't know if this might change in the future. I'm told it might. I'm not sure. There's no final word on this yet. But yeah, so at the moment, if you want to do that, you will have to risk, checking. Or risk, but you will have to do it yourself, is what I was going to say. So, yeah, you better know what you're doing and feel comfortable, taking off the cooler and putting a water block on it, or maybe an AIO and a closed loop cooler or something like that. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend it, especially also because this cooler is doing a more than adequate job. So you could do it for the sake of it, but you really don't need to. It's not like the GPU temperatures are out of control. You don't have another choice. Yeah, Port Royal, again, I wouldn't read too much into the score because it's being hampered a little bit by NDI.
Noxai is asking, water cooling better than air cooling? It really depends on your water cooling setup. Yeah. If it's better or not.
Yeah. During this benchmark, 65 degrees. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, the max it's been through this whole stream, on all the benchmarking gameplay we've done, is 67 degrees, which is very low. I'm not really challenging the GPU apparently at 4K. It's yawning a little bit. Let's just try one thing. It's TimeSpy Extreme 4K gaming with DirectX 12. This is also a relatively taxing benchmark. So, and this is the last one I'll run today. And after that, I'm going to do, Riples or R4Ples.
That's good timing.
Yeah, that's excellent timing. I just saw the comment and I'm like, yes, after this benchmark, I'm actually going to shut down the test rig. I'm going to take the 3090 gaming off. Hope to God I don't burn my fingers while doing it. And then take it apart for you guys. $3080 price. GG, we already mentioned that earlier this stream. But yeah, there is some MSRP price. Again, you can go back earlier in the stream where we mentioned it. But like with every generation, a new generation, the prices at the beginning, it's supply and demand. There is a hell of a lot of demand, not that much supply, so prices will be higher. If you wait, typically, in the past we've also seen typically a couple of weeks, couple of months, and the price will drop a bit. It will normalize or stabilize, if you will. And at the moment, there's really not that much that we can do about it, unfortunately.
So a question from the Magic Toaster, can you do an SLI test? No, unfortunately we don't have the updated bridge for that yet, because it's not compatible with the bridge from the previous generation.
Yes.
So unfortunately we cannot run SLI today yet.
In the benchmark, is DLSS and ray tracing already on? Which benchmark hypergame? Because in benchmarks like this, for example, there is no ray tracing in this benchmark you're seeing right now in TimeSpy, and DLSS is not an option in these. And Port Royal, so the previous benchmark just before this one, that's a pretty much ray tracing focused benchmark, but also it does not apply any DLSS. The only benchmark that we did was an in-game benchmark today in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, where we did a benchmark, both of them with ray traced shadows enabled, at the highest possible settings, everything at the highest possible settings, so 4K and then everything on ultra or high. And we did one first with DLSS disabled, also to see how high the memory usage would be. And then we enabled DLSS, did the same benchmark, so everything left the same, just so you could see the impact of DLSS. And it, I think it increased the FPS by I don't know, it went from 41 FPS average in our case to 73 off top of my head, so it's a big difference, DLSS. But in this case, no, DLSS is definitely not enabled, at least not as far as I know, because that could be considered cheating, I guess, or if you want to see it that way. But in benchmarks, like synthetic benchmarks like this, 3D Mark, typically, no. DLSS is not a thing. It's not activated. It's not used.
Noxide is asking on YouTube, best card for streaming 1080p 144 hertz. Do you mean like streaming to Twitch, for example, or YouTube streaming like that, or do you mean like streaming like GeForce Now kind of streaming?
I don't know. That's a difficult question. By the way, just also want to quickly point out, I wanted to quickly point out the GPU temperatures. It was barely up to 65, I think, and it was being taxed 100%. Again, these are very short, like burst benchmarks. So what typically you will find brands doing, and also our engineers in the background, and they've been running GPUs like this for weeks or days at least. Running benchmarks, so then you would see a bit higher temperature, obviously, and also, I mean, that's more realistic as well, because when you're playing a game, I don't know about you guys, but you don't usually tend to play it for just 10 or 15 minutes, right? You'll be playing for up to hours, or quite long. So you want to make sure that during that extended period of time, that your GPU, your graphics card, is able to cool the GPU and keep everything cool without running into any troubles or. This is actually the CPU benchmark, right? I should have maybe disabled that one. Anyway, not really relevant for the for the graphics card we have installed.
Hyper Gaming 26 is asking, do you still use the armor design?
No, currently in the current generation, the current lineup, we do not have an armor design. No, we currently only have two designs. One of which is gaming, which is the one I've got on the bench here, and the other one is Ventus, as you can see here. So, gaming. Ventus, and gaming, this is Gaming X Trio, because obviously Trio, 3 fans, and Ventus X3, because also 3 fans. There you go. Those are at currently at least the 2 flavors. However, I have been told by reliable resources that there will be more models becoming available at some point in the future, but I cannot tell you which or when, so you'll have to wait and see.
Noxide is saying streaming on YouTube. Yeah, for 1080p 144 hertz, this might be a little bit overkill.
Yeah.
And it also depends a little bit on how you want to stream it. If you want to use want to do the encoding by your CPU, if you want to use the one on your GPU. I believe the encoder on the Ampere cards is the same as on Turing.
Might have
so
gotten a bit improved, but yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was. I think it's identical. I believe.
Not sure.
It is.
You might be right there. You might be right.
Yeah.
I tend to forget these things right after the right after the initial launch.
Yeah, but from the previous generation already got quite a big upgrade. So the Turing encoder was quite really good already. Yeah, especially when you compare it to older generations, it really got a lot better. So I would recommend going, if you want to do the encoding on your GPU, to go for a 20 or 30 series, because you will have that better encoder. If you're doing the encoding on your CPU, then it doesn't matter that much what kind of GPU you use, as long as it can run the games you want to play. Yep. But then you won't have, there won't be that much of a difference in terms of GPU.
All right, so besides the score, and again, this will probably be lower, small disclaimer, because of the NDI that we're also running over the graphics card. Just want to run quickly over the temperatures that were done during the benchmark. So the benchmark consisted out of 3 parts. I think actually these are the two. Yeah, these are the 2 parts that we ran. And then here was the CPU part, which we will find out if we... let's see, where's the CPU usage? You'll see a spike there. Here you go, in CPU temperature. So that was there. The graphics card tests were these 2 little bumps. As you see, the temperature went up to all of 62 in the first one and 64. Maybe, did I see a 65? No, 64 in the second one. So again, really cool. GPU usage, well, to be expected in a synthetic benchmark, pretty much 100% across those 2. Yeah. I think we can conclude it's a cool and quiet monster. So
Booper Duper is asking, what are you guys going to do about bots buying cards? I'm scared about 3070, and I really want an MSI 3070. The thing is, we don't sell our cards directly to you guys. It's always like a shop in between in your region. So in that sense, we're not selling the product, so we don't have any influence on
it's the shops,
on any of these things.
It's the shops that will have to try, and I mean, this is not easy, I guess. If it were easy, everybody would be able to do it, but it's really up to the shops, because again, we're not even allowed to interfere in that process. It's a very complicated legal thing where, similarly to like, we are not allowed to set the prices that shops let you pay for the products. If they want, they can give them away for free, for example. Obviously, that's not a good business model, but just to prove to prove the point, they are allowed to do that, and there's nothing we could do to stop it, because that's by law they're allowed to do it. But similarly, if they want to sell it for a higher price, or if anybody wants to sell it for, that's why scalpers is also really a difficult thing, because legally it's not that it's forbidden or anything. It's not legally forbidden to do that. It's ethically, and morally, I don't know, dubious or wrong, or however you want to go, infuriating. It's something that you really think, well, come on. But legally, there's not that much you can do about it, because again, we're not allowed to influence that part. All we are allowed to do is make a graphics card, sell it to. We could sell it directly potentially, but like Mike said, we don't do that. We always sell through our partners and resellers, and the channel, as we call it. So yeah, they then are allowed to set the price based on what we charge them, or what we. I mean, we do have an MSRP, like a guideline, but they don't have to stick to it if they don't want to. That's the point. It's just an advice saying we think it should cost something like this.
I see Jay Hanneman is asking on Twitch, is MSI a Taiwanese company?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Can you, Mike, can you switch back to the main view, by the way, because then I can power down this system. So, and as you can see, by the way, 0 Frozr. The card is now, let me quickly pull up Afterburn. Oh, I actually closed it down already. Anyway, it's below a certain temperature, so then the fan stops spinning, because cooling is no longer needed.
Yeah, and it's still running.
Yeah, exactly. It's still it's idling on the desktop. But if you were, for example, just I don't know, browsing web pages, doing light things which is not really taxing or stressing the GPU, then yeah, the card's fans will just stop because again, it doesn't need any cooling at this point. So I'm now powering down the rig, and the goal here is then I can remove the graphics card, put the rig behind me on the table, and start tearing down the card for you guys.
So while you take it apart, I think it's time to pick another winner.
Oh yeah.
So if you haven't participated yet, go to msi.com/2/insider. We will give away several $20 Steam wallet codes today. On the website, you will find a link to our Gleam giveaway. If you follow the link, you can perform certain actions. The more actions you perform, the bigger chance you will have to win. You only have to do that once per stream. So if you already did that today, no need to do it again. You will automatically be enrolled in the next drawings as well. And our next winner for today is Damnation689. Congratulations, you also won a $20 Steam wallet code. Keep an eye out on your mailbox because we will email it to you in the coming days.
It's actually not that bad. I was afraid it was going to be hotter, but it's actually not that bad. It's not that toasty. So yeah. That went, I guess, you know, because again, the fans, they do their work, and once they stop spinning, it kind of indicates that the card is already at a more agreeable temperature, so it's yeah, should be okay to touch. Let's see, I have to disconnect a couple of cables to prevent just dragging everything off the table while I'm...
Noxide is asking, does MSI make peripherals?
Yes.
Yeah, we do.
I've got some
Actually,
on the table right here.
You might be able to see a little bit right here.
We've got some streams about it as well. This is a low-profile mechanical keyboard, if you believe it. It's really nice. My favorite, actually. I like it. Eric, too, I'm told. He used to laugh at low profile, and then we actually asked him to try it, and now he's hooked. He wouldn't give his sample back, so we had to get a new one. And for example, also a mouse. But we also have headsets, we have mouse pads, we have a whole bunch of things. But you can find it under the product category of gaming gear, is what we call it.
Game controllers as well.
Oh yeah, exactly, yeah. So controllers even. Okay, let's see. So I'll just get this out of the way so we have more space for the teardown, which I think most of you guys are looking forward to now. All right, so let's see. Okay, here we go. This is the card we're gonna tear down for you today. Oh, by the way, before we do that, I promised I would show you guys once I powered down the card, the difference between the fans, right? You remember? So, this was the Torque Fan 3.0, again, with the little, yeah, stripes on the fan here, the little standing edges. And this is the Torque Fan 4.0. And as you can see, the fans now are paired up by an outside link on the outside of the fan blades. So the blades are actually working in tandem, in pairs. Yeah, there's no like standing edges on it or something. So it's a bit of a different fan design. But as I'm sure you saw during the benchmarks and with the temperature meetings, and you will see in the media reviews as well, this fan design and this thermal design is just really good. It does the job beautifully. So there you go.
I see a question on YouTube chat. Are there specifics that MSI provides to provide sagging? I think you mean to avoid sagging, GPU sagging.
Well, yeah, I'll show you that in a minute as well. I can already show you on the outside. This is what we call our anti-bending bracket. So this is already in the graphics card, and I think all the graphics card right now have it, at least because most of them are quite big and heavy. So also Ventus. I can show you that, by the way. Here you go. So this is the anti-bending bracket on the Ventus, and what this does is it connects to the I/O bracket here, which is this is the part that you actually screw onto your desktop, your case in the back, with 2 screws usually, and we do recommend that you use 2 screws because that's always more fixed. And then this runs along at least about, I think, half of the PCB. So this is one thing that helps because it's quite thick metal part as well. If you can see that, it's about as thick as the PCB, maybe even thicker than the PCB itself. And this is like metal. so it's really strong as well. You probably would have a hard time bending this by hand if you want. So that's one of the big parts, and then obviously there's a lot of screws going through the backplate, so that kind of helps prevent sagging as well, because the screws going through the backplate through the PCB as well, and then connecting on the other side with parts of the heatsink or parts of the anti-banding, for example. You will see that in the gaming when I disassemble it. But that all adds to, it's kind of like it's tensioning the PCB in between all these parts, and that's really what's keeping it from, you know, going anywhere. I mean, I can try and flex these cards, but it's like, yeah, there's not a lot of flex here to be had. So it's very sturdy. And the gaming, same story, is actually a bit more sturdy. Because it's, I think the other one was a 3080 and this is a 3090, so it's a little bit heavier. Gaming as well is a bit heavier. Yeah, anyway, okay. I don't know if I can get this one down just a little bit more so you guys can see what I'm doing. Yep, there we go, okay. Let's hope I don't screw up.
DK is asking, does the 3090 have a metal backplate?
It does, yes. And to prove my point, this is a 3090 gaming as well, and I've got a little metal screwdriver here, and I'm gonna put it,
don't scratch it,
close to my mic. That's metal. That is not plastic. All right, so to take this one apart, I think it's best to start at the backplate actually, because that's where most of the screws are located, and also some of those screws go through into the front. So you'll see me fiddling around with, I think there are some located, I believe, on this side. Maybe not. No, I think that was a 3080 actually. I didn't really get to take apart the 3090 quite yet, so because again, I got it earlier today. I'm just going to remove the little dust covers here as well for the display ports. Right, let's get into it. Mike, feel free to call out some interesting questions while I do this, else it will just become a silent, boring video.
Sufjan's asking, which fan is more silent? I believe he's talking about the Torx fan 3.0 or Torx fan 4.0.
Both are incredibly silent, and I guess it really depends on the scenario, but I guess you could say Torx fan 4.0 should be more silent, purely because it shouldn't have to spin at the same high or you know, the same amount of RPM. It only requires a lower amount of RPM spinning the Torx fan 4.0 to achieve the same airflow or air pressure compared to the Torx fan 3.0. So if you had to make a comparison, Torx fan 4.0 should be slightly more silent, slightly better at its job, and that's why
a lot of people are also asking about a possible RTX 3080 with more VRAM.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, even if it would be true, we would not be able to talk about it yet.
No. We also saw the rumors, and you know, we'll see what happens. Let's see. So there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 screws in here, just on the back plate. It's already quite a bit.
Ryan Gaming is asking, do you allow users to replace thermal paste on your GPUs without voiding the warranty?
Yes, unless you break something in the process. We don't recommend it typically, and it shouldn't really be necessary, because again, the thermal paste we've chosen has two main purposes. One, it has to be really good at its job, and secondly, it has to last. And what you typically see, there are some thermal pastes which...
Conductivity and durability, basically.
Yeah, exactly. There are obviously some thermal pastes that might be, you know, a bit better at conductivity on the short term, but they might also and probably will dry up sooner. So that means that, I don't know, sooner than the stock thermal paste you have on here, you would have to end up opening it up again and then reapplying the thermal paste, because the conductivity will decrease when it dries up, when it dries out. So the thermal paste that we apply on the GPU we at least try to make the best balance between connectivity, so making sure it cools quite well, but also that it lasts, so that even if you run it, I don't know, for 4 years or something, 4 or 5 years, that you shouldn't have to replace it because it starts to be less effective. Well, we saw the backplate I showed earlier, so this is the one I'm literally now taking off the graphics card. As you can see, it's identical, although some of the thermal pads that are on the memory are actually sticking to the memory instead of the backplate in this one. Here you have some of the thermal pads actually still on the backplate. So I'll put this to the side.
Jahaneman is saying it must be weird opening up a card which is half of your monthly salary. Well, we made an agreement up front, and if Peter breaks it today, then we will deduct 2 weeks of his holiday balance.
Nice. All right. Would it be nice if you told me that before I open it up?
I forgot to tell you.
Just kidding. Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to remove all of them because, truthfully, I'm going to have to put this thing back together again after the stream, and it will have to be used in other benchmarks and testing again, so it will have to work. But as you can see, if I remove one of these thermal pads, you'll see here are the, oh, it's sticky. Here are the memory modules and this is the rear of the PCB, by the way. So this is the front, this is the rear. So there is, let's see, there's probably 4 on here as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 modules on the rear. Which makes sense, because that would be perhaps half. If each of these is 1 gigs and it has 24, then that's like exactly half of the memory on the back. And then the other 12 modules should be found on the other side of the PCB. Anyway, I'll just put this back into place, and then I'll remove the leaf spring, which I was talking about earlier, which one of you guys was asking about. Let's put this back on here. By the way, this is the RGB strip on the side. So on the back plate, this is what covers it. It's like a foggy glass, which nicely disperses the light as well. And as you can see, the LEDs are kind of like placed into these cutouts here. And they're actually, they are placed on the PCB itself, on a white surface to increase reflectability, of course. So this will make it a little bit brighter. But yeah, the diodes are actually on the PCB itself.
Zico Sabroso is asking, do I have to buy a new PSU, or will these cards come with an adapter? Actually, our cards, both are designed, so both the gaming and the Ventus still use the regular 8-pin power connectors.
As you can see here.
So if you have a somewhat recent power supply, and if it's strong enough, then you should be able to use them with that power supply. See a question if we're Dutch. Yes, both Peter and I are Dutch.
Will you remove the cooler? Yes, I will. And to start doing that, actually, we have to start with this bracket, which was asked about earlier. This thing, which actually is visible through the hole in the backplate as well. Here we go. So this hole in the backplate is actually meant for this leaf spring here. And I'm now going to remove it, so you can really see. This adds the tension, extra tension to the cooler, so it connects even better to the GPU itself. And there is a little bit of a sticker on here, that one. So that really can tell our RMA department, if I were to send this card back, at least they would know somebody was messing around with this cooler. That doesn't necessarily void warranty, but if they find damage that relates to the thing I've done here, then
they will basically check if you destroyed anything in there.
Accidentally, obviously, because you wouldn't do that on purpose. Anyway, I'll start with that one, because I want to... There we go.
Jana is saying on Twitch chat, for the foreigners who want to hear the beautiful Dutch, can you please say, Amsterdam heeft 88 prachtige grachten. So then now you know what Dutch sounds like.
Yeah, but we usually want to avoid speaking in our native tongue because it's,
Indeed, not everyone can understand it.
It's an international...
That's what Dutch sounds like. So that, indeed, so that's also why we speak English, because you wouldn't be able to understand this program.
But as you can see, if I unscrew one of these screws on the leaf spring, what happens is, I'm trying to get this thing closer, but as you can see, it just springs up here. So that's really, and all of these corners will do that once I undo the screws. But as you can see, that's really what applies on this side especially. So in the little square here, that's where most of the pressure is being applied. And then on the other side, these screws connect to the cooler itself. So they really, they clamp it down, they clamp down, and the GPU is like in the middle. So there's like an added amount of pressure for the cooler, which should increase surface contact, and by doing that also increasing the efficiency of the cooler. So I'll just remove the other three. And actually you have to be kind of careful if you do this, because these, if you let go at the wrong moment, they will launch the screw, because it's like a spring.
Brian is asking, should an 800 watt power supply be enough with a 3900 XT? Depends on the exact model of the power supply, but if it's a high quality power supply, then yes, 800 watts should be sufficient for a 3900 XT and an RTX 3090.
So there you go.
But like as I said, depends on the power supply, exact model.
There's the leaf spring. So this is the shape it takes when it's you know, not bolted down basically, but once you do bolt it down, all the edges are, you know, will be deformed. And this is actually, I mean, it's quite sturdy, so it takes a lot of force to actually push this down. So this applies a lot of force onto the cooler. And here it is without the leaf spring, the back of the PCB. And what I'll do now is I'll see what other screws I have to undo before I can carefully start wiggling the cooler to see if it'll come off. And I think, let me just quickly, I think it's mostly, yeah, it's two things. So it's this screw here, because it's, yeah, no, actually this one doesn't have to come off, because that's just holding the I/O bracket to the PCB, so that's not required to take off if I want to remove the cooler. But I think, well, it really depends if the cooler is fixed to this part, because this thing is actually, again, attached to the I/O cover, so I might have to remove this. But let's see what happens if I start wiggling it now without doing any of that stuff. By the way, if you ever do this, this is a graphics card with both, you know, obviously active fans, so that means that you will have some connectors. I don't know if you guys can see this, but like there are some connectors here with wires going from the heatsink, from the fans or the lighting, either way, to the PCB. So don't just yank it off, because you might just destroy these connectors here. Be very, very careful if you ever have to do this. Just start wiggling it, see what happens, and then, you know, try to, if it even comes off, try to make sure it doesn't just go like whoosh, but, you know, keep it like that it's still close together, so that you can be careful. Yeah, yeah. You can do a very controlled way of holding, getting them off.
Kelvin is asking on Twitch, I guess my biggest question is, will the 3090 work with the 5820K 6-core i7 on X299? Yes, it will. It has PCI Express, so that will not be an issue. And as I see Alpha Duplo already mentioned, it can bottleneck depending on the use case.
There we go.
But yes, it will work. It has PCI Express slot. It is compatible. It will of course run PCI Express Gen 3, not Gen 4, but it is compatible.
It was quite. It required quite a bit of force to take them apart, but as you can see, it came off. And now,
can we already deduct 2 weeks of holiday?
No, not yet. I managed to be careful, I think.
Okay.
So as you can see, the connectors are still there. So what I'm going to do now is try to carefully disconnect the cables. Let's see, because there are at the rear of the PCB, at the bottom side, there are two. And be careful never to, let's see if I can show you guys while I do this. Be careful never to yank, just start yanking at the cables, because these connectors are quite vulnerable. So for example, in this case, you can see there's a little ledge here under the connector. Better to try and get your nail or something else under there to like wiggle it out carefully. It's a bit awkward to do that like in front of the camera, as in because I'd have to hold the card in a way that I can't actually see what I'm doing. So I'm gonna try and do it this way. And slowly wedge it out. Jesus.
Noxide is asking, do the MSI 30 series cards come plug and play, or do we need to assemble some stuff? No, this is just to show the inside of the card. It's a teardown. But if you get one of these cards, you just get everything properly assembled.
Yes.
And you only need to put it in your PC.
Pretty much.
And of course, connect it to your power supply.
Oof, wow, that was just one connector. I would really love to have like a little flat tool to do this, but I don't know if I have one here, so I'm just gonna have to make do bending my nails. Oh, all right, that's two connectors here. As you can see now, I've removed these two, or unsocketed them. And now I'm gonna do the ones on the top here. Here we go. Yeah, those two. So the red one, and there's a black one there as well. So I'm gonna try and as carefully as I can. But now I can already kind of like, you know, open it like this.
Open it up, yeah.
Yes. Let me just disconnect it, because then I'll have more freedom to show you guys the different components on the card. Here we go, that's one. And that's two, all right. Okay. Let's start with the PCB. So as you can see, this is like this is the naked piece. Well, kind of naked. It's still covered by the. This is the anti-bending strip, as you see. So it runs all the way across this this point here. If I want to take this off, it's possible, but then I'd have to like remove, I guess, 2 more screws. I think so. Yeah. So these 2 screws that are holding it, or yeah, pinning it with the I/O bracket. But you can already see. I mean, there's the other. I guess 12. I didn't count them, but I'm pretty sure it's the same amount. So also 12 memory modules on the front side of the PCB. The GPU, and yeah, this might be a bit of an issue here. I don't know if this happened while I was disassembling it, or if it was already like this. I guess it just happened while I pulled the card apart, and some of it got, I don't know, moved to the memory.
RIP holiday.
RIP holiday, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I also
Anthony
kind of,
Moyes is saying, by the way, in chat, what are the best current CPUs to pair with the RTX 3090? We actually extensively talked about this topic, so I see you're on YouTube. You can actually play back a little bit or watch it back later as well, because we talked quite extensively about how to basically combine a certain CPU and GPU. So make sure to check that out.
Well, as you can see, a lot of power phases here. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll attempt counting them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Wait, I'm gonna recount it because I'm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. All right, 11. And then there are more here. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 17, 18. I'm counting 18, but I might have missed 1 or 2. But I think it's 18. Not 100% sure. But yeah, a lot of power phases, and this generation. I mean, traditionally you would find, for example, a power design, all the power components on one side. I think last generation it was the 2080 Ti, which also had a part of it on this side of the PCB, and this generation it's more common. I think the 3080 also has a, you know, the power components on both sides of the GPU, and of course the 3090 being a more powerful graphics card, a more powerful GPU, it will need more components, so it will have more phases, and you will also find them on either side of the GPU here. 3 8-pin power connectors. I do believe we mentioned this before, but the power limit on this card out of the box is 370 watts, and it can go. You can push it up to 385. But yeah, again, it's after that point it really starts the benefit of pushing more power into it. Converts way more into heat instead of performance. So it's debatable how much that of a benefit you can get.
Diminishing returns.
Exactly.
It's often like that with overclocking. These products are usually tuned to function in the sweet spot.
Yes.
If you go beyond that, it will exponentially increase the power draw, and it will not translate in similar performance.
No.
So it's not linear, it's
Exactly.
exponential when you do overclocking.
You can see, by the way, there are some fuses here directly below the 8-pin connectors. Again, this is just to if something would happen to the card and you know, either a cap blows or something, then instead of keeping everything you know, powered and keep providing power to those broken parts, which would only break things further and make the situation worse, the cap would then blow, and but in that process then also make sure that that part doesn't get any power anymore, which would make RMA or fixing the card, if necessary, easier. So it would serve to mitigate damage, I guess, is a good way to say it. But yeah, ideally you should never even notice them or need these things. So it's just in the event of, it's like an extra safety measure pretty much. Yeah, other than that, there's a lot of caps in here, but I'm not that technical. I don't do PCB analysis. All I can say is it's a very powerful card, as we saw. The GPU, I don't know, yeah, maybe I can clean it a little bit, but I don't have any. I think I should get some paper here. 1 second, see if I can do that, because I want to show you the underside of the heatsink anyway, and that's also covered by some thermal paste. So let's see if I can get some paper here. Although
Noxide is asking, does MSI have an official Discord server?
Toilet paper
yeah, we
here,
actually
but
do.
I think somebody removed them.
I see Eric is currently in chat. Eric, can you maybe drop an invite link to the MSI Discord server in the chat?
I guess I'm just gonna have to make do with it. So let's see, I'm gonna put my little ear back in so I can hear Mike. Because then I would say let's switch to the showing you the heatsink. Actually, this is the underside of the heatsink, so this is the side you would normally see. And then underneath that is the part you normally don't see, or you shouldn't see in the ideal situation. And I'm just gonna remove this thermal paste here, so you can, well, actually you can already see, maybe I can use this. So these are the heat pipes. These copper things here are really shiny as well. And as you can see, there's like very little space in between them. And these are what we call core pipes. And the thing that we did here is these, as you can see, these directly touch the GPU die to extract heat. And then the heat pipes, they transfer the heat across and you know, distribute it across the heatsink here. So that's the job of the heat pipes. Or the function of the heat pipes, rather. And the less space you have in between the pipes, so the more smooth the surface and the less space is between each pipe, or each two pipes basically, the more heat or the more efficient your heat transfer is. So the more heat it will take from the GPU die to distribute over the whole length of the heatsink to cool the card. And as you saw in the benchmarks, it does a pretty freaking good job at it. So yeah, these, I think if you saw did we do a teardown last week? I'm not sure, I think we did, yeah. And well, Peter did, the other Peter, FAE Peter. And I think we had a similar layout where we saw 7 heat pipes in total. I think you can see that here as well, because there's 3 at the bottom here, and there's a diameter here. I think it's 6 maybe. These ones are 6 millimeters. Not 100% sure. The middle one here is a bit thicker or a bit fatter, so that's like 8 maybe. And then there's 3 at the above it as well here, again. So that's a total of 7. And yeah, they distribute the heat. Then there's a whole row of thermal pads on either side of this big plate, which cover the most of the power components, so the caps and the MOSFETs and stuff like that, which also produce a lot of heat because they deal with the whole power circuitry. So those are also some of the components that tend to get a bit hotter. Not quite as hot as the GPU, mind you, but also they generate heat. So they get cooled directly, and they can shed their heat directly to the heatsink, and yeah, that also makes it very efficient at cooling the card. Let's see, yeah, on the rear of the card, I mean, this is also something we know from pretty much from last generation, all kinds of like aerodynamic trickery, or well, trickery is not the right word, but tricks to help with efficiency. So here are some indentations, some shapes stamped into the fin stack, as you can see here, for example. And this is basically to push air more directly onto each heat pipe, because that's where most of the heat will be concentrated. So the more airflow you can get onto those heat pipes, the faster they will help to cool the card a little bit already, before the heat even gets to the fins. So that helps. And there's of course the, I don't know if you can quite see it, maybe through the fans here, but the wave curved fin design. So that also serves the purpose of smoothing the travel of the airflow as it is pushed down through the heatsink. Instead of hitting a flat surface, which would result in more noise, the waves actually lessen the noise. So that also results in a more silent cooling.
Yeah, so that's what you can see underneath the fan.
Yes.
You see the wave pattern there.
Exactly, yeah. So in between the fins here, you can see that it's a bit...
Is it visible from the side, or is the shroud in the way?
No, I think the shroud is in the way, actually, because as you can see here...
Yeah, it's a little bit hard
the shroud
to see,
is covering it just enough so you can... it's obscured by the shroud, let's say. Yeah. So that's pretty much it. Guys, any questions that we could perhaps... Will you guys make a rear blowing system card? Based on the current GPUs, no. Simply because a blower card is less efficient because it only has one fan, a radial fan, and it's less efficient at cooling than a fan design like this. So in order to cool the 3080 and 3090, which have relatively high or higher, I should say, power usage compared to previous generations.
Yeah, so the TDP is,
you could potentially do it. You could potentially do it, but you would have to spin the fan pretty freaking loud to be able to provide decent cooling. So that wouldn't give you a good experience. It would be like having a leaf blower in your PC, and I mean, who wants that? Can you disassemble the fan? Yeah, perhaps in an upcoming stream. Right now, I think I'm going to leave it at this because I just saw the time, and I think we have to.
You'll be kicked out of the office in 3 minutes.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So we have to actually start ending the stream. How about that? Anyway.
So in the meanwhile, I will also pick our last winner for today.
Yes.
If you didn't win today, next week we will have a new stream. Where you can obviously also win one of the $20 Steam wallet codes.
RSTV 3090 Strix versus Trio. Actually, if you want to, and then after the stream ends, you can scroll back a little bit. We actually covered a little bit about that in one of the reviews by Tech Power Up. They actually did compare those two. So that's where you can find a comparison in cooling, noise, and stuff like that. But yeah, we also covered that during the stream, so you're free to scroll back or rewatch the stream.
So next week we're going to talk about our new MEG Aegis Ti5. Our new gaming desktop looks like it comes directly from the future, also equipped with a new generation of RTX graphics cards, the 30 series. And then I also have our last winner, I should say, for today. Yeah. Fongface, congratulations, you also won a $20 Steam wallet code. Keep an eye out on your mailbox. We will send it to you in the coming days. If you didn't win today, make sure to tune in next week in our Aegis Ti5 live stream. Yep. Anything else to add, Peter?
Well, I just saw Eric De Gregorio. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. He's saying, fix your 3080 series. This crashing is unbearable and unplayable. I get half frame rate at the beginning. we are aware of the issue. We are investigating it. We also don't know exactly what's causing it. It could be the drivers, in which case there's not really much we can do. But if it's something that we can fix in our firmware, in our VBIOS or anything like that, we will make sure to do that. Yeah, I mean, we're really sorry that you're experiencing this. If you're even one of the lucky ones that already have this card, which it sounds like you do. But yeah, you want to have that full FPS experience. So I get it, and we are working as fast as we can to help fix the issue. That's it. I also saw somebody asking, what are you drinking? Maybe you can do a close-up here. It's regular old water. Here you go. And it's nearly done now.
That's a boring answer.
I know. I'm sorry. I would love to say whiskey or something like that, but you know, it's I don't think we're allowed to do that at work.
Let's wrap it up with that boring answer.
Yes.
Thank you for joining, everyone. Hope to see you again next week.
Yes.
Make sure to join our giveaway as well then. And have a good day.
We'll see you guys next week.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.